At that time, he was already holding on to the second half of the 21st century. Everywhere they sold the VR game Sword and Magic. It was a VR MMORPG where everyone could choose a character from different races and fight with swords and magic. When the guy was about to leave the game, someone was waiting for him there. He glanced ahead, froze in surprise. A girl stood before him and greeted him. She was a beautiful girl with long blonde hair. She was a representative of the elf race. Elf Lala with shining blue eyes called him and named the boy Mr. Pepperin. So far, everything that happened took place in the throne hall of the Demon King. The hall was huge. To the right of the throne hung a large canopy with the kingdom's emblem. There gathered a huge crowd of people of different races watching and listening to the words of their demonic king, who announced to them that the moment they had been waiting for had finally come. The one who sat on the throne was a boy. His name was Pepperin. He played the role of the king of the kingdom of Gloria Septim. The boy realized the cooperative game Might and Magic unexpectedly became successful, so it interested him. That guy tried to unite representatives of different races to achieve world domination. In capture mode in the game, you can only play as 7 weak ones and among the 35 types of races presented in the game Might and Magic. Sam Pepperin himself assembled his character from such races. He became a representative of the gnome race, the weakest and smallest of all. And that boy clearly remembered how he was overwhelmed with fear by the mere thought of huge monsters. He still remembered how at the beginning of the game he could not properly withstand even the simplest opponents. He was easily defeated, and so every day, from game to game, it ended for him. And by continuing to properly develop your attributes, you will eventually become strong regardless of race. Pepperin was able to defeat his enemies effortlessly over time. Then the boy created the kingdom Gloria Septim, where he stood at the head of various races. He was followed with admiration and a numerous flock of fans with respect and admiration. He and his subordinates devised a plan and managed to capture a quarter of the world. It was the magnificent rise of his kingdom. Suddenly someone called out to the boys sitting on the throne. The girl with elven ears asked him what they should do next. It was a girl named Lala, a representative of the elf race. Elves were beautiful and strong but did not have a special status. They practiced archery, but their damage from attacks was low. The girl was waiting for orders from her master. Dwarf Pepperin noticed the facial expressions of the characters were too monotonous, nothing like real people. The girl continuously questioned the boy on how to get somewhere, waiting for his answer. For a VR game, this was extremely bad. The boy smiled and told his subordinate that the day had been hard, so he decided to rest a little better. Then, without getting up from the throne, Pepperin called the system with the word exit. He tried to exit the game through the system. A message appeared on the system unit. The boy could stay in the game or exit, and he chose to exit. As soon as he made the choice, the system unit instantly dissolved into darkness. Then Pepperin stopped seeing the throne hall, only darkness remained. After a few minutes, the darkness did not disappear, and the boy felt something went wrong because the game exit was loading too long. He thought something bad had happened to the game. But then Pepperin finally saw something else, not just the darkness. It was a girl, the elf Lala. She was calling her master Pepperin, and the boy froze for a moment. Hearing her voice, he immediately realized something bad had happened. The elf Lala looked at him with tears in her eyes. She was happy that her lord had finally awakened. Only from happiness she came too close to Pepperin. The man shuddered when he realized that before him was his subordinate elf Lala. The girl told him everything. It turned out he had been asleep for 3 whole days, which scared her. Then the girl, calming down a bit, began wiping tears from her face, tears of joy that the boy was awakened and healthy. But Pepperin was silent for a moment. He could not find words. The boy felt something strange. The impression of the graphics was not the same as during the game, as if everything had changed. The girl leaned toward him, and the boy clearly saw every detail of Lala's appearance. Pepperin noticed how Lala's elven ears began to move. The man had never seen such impressive graphic effects in the game Power and Magic. It was as if the game had turned into reality. Every movement of the girl was noticeable. The man suddenly began to understand the whole situation. For a moment, a strange, incredible thought struck his mind. Pepperin froze as if staring into emptiness. Other sensations during the game meant only one thing. Pepperin was in deep shock. He began to examine his body with great surprise because he realized he had found himself in another world. Then the boy with black hair began to panic and deny his thought about transitioning to another world. After all, the Isekai genre was at the peak of popularity several decades ago, and now it had already become a classic. Suddenly, a girl approached him. Lala noticed his strange state. Then the girl asked Pepperin if she could do something for him. He silently looked at her, stunned. After that, he apologized to his subordinate and immediately reached out to the girl. With his palm, he touched her face, her cheeks flushed with a blush. Dwarf Peeperin slowly ran his palm, sliding to her elven ears. He felt the texture of her skin. It seemed to him as if he was touching a living person. The girl had sensitive ears, so from his touch her face blushed even more. Lala, feeling her master's touch, sharply exhaled air. The girl barely endured her master's touches. The boy understood. No VR game had ever been so realistic. Continuing to touch Lala, he was not even sure if a game with such realistic graphics existed at all. The main character thought about this fearfully, and Lala sadly realized that she no longer felt his touch. She looked at the boy with bright blue eyes and thought that he would continue to touch her. But suddenly the boy pinched his own face hard, and the girl was momentarily frightened by Peeperin's strange actions. The man felt pain from the pinch. He recalled that in VR games one could feel slight pain by changing settings. The law prohibited connecting pain sensations. Even if in the game you hit your little finger on a nightstand, players felt almost nothing. This was how the game's software was programmed, so no firmware or mods would help. The boy did not understand. If he was really in the world of might and magic, then why was he not next to the throne? He recalled his luxurious throne. It stood in the throne hall of his castle. The boy also did not understand where he was now. After all, before leaving the game, Peeperin was in the royal palace in his kingdom, Gloria Septim. Suddenly he realized with surprise, now he was standing in a wooden hut that he had built at the very beginning of the game. He was trembling from such a shock. He turned pale and pondered. After all, after he was transferred to this world, his kingdom with the glorious septum could have disappeared, and only the very first hut he built remained. Of all his subjects, Lala got the worst possible outcome. The man called Lala. He wanted to ask the girl where they were, but she only shook her head sadly. She did not know about their new location. She herself wondered what had happened to the kingdom of Gloria Septim. Lala did not have time to figure out how she ended up in this hut. The man believed that now it was only the two of them here. But the girl did not agree with him. It turned out that all his other 5 subjects were nearby: the goblin Gas, the titan Nobo, the kobold Pachai, and also the wise demon Airy and the harpy Phinasia. All except the elf Lala went on a reconnaissance mission to find out more about the place where they had ended up. The girl stayed to watch over the boy. The boy realized. At this moment he and the girl were the only ones left here, and there was no one else. Peeperin got out of bed, and the girl immediately became worried. She decided that he needed rest. He had just woken up after a long sleep, but Peeperin reassured her, saying that he just wanted to breathe fresh air. The girl anxiously joined him. She wanted to go together. Then the boy took the girl and headed to the door to finally leave the wooden house. The man opened the door and found himself outside in deep shock at what he saw. His eyes widened sharply in amazement. Peeperin looked around in astonishment. He knew this. The boy in shock named the surrounding area. They found themselves on Talsheim Plain. The wooden shack was surrounded on all sides only by a plain with bright green grasses. It was on the Talsheim Plain that he founded his first base. Then this guy began to expand the territory. First a village appeared, then a settlement was created, and later a city. On its territory, increasingly complex architectural structures appeared. With further development, he created his own kingdom called Gloria Septim. Peeperin understood. If there was nothing on the Talsheim Plain at that moment, it meant only one thing: his kingdom, Gloria Septim, had truly disappeared. The boy was overwhelmed, was in despair from this news. He grabbed his head, unable to bear the realization of the whole situation. But he came to his senses because of the girl and stopped squeezing his head. The man felt awkward for a moment because of his own actions. Lala also realized that Gloria Septim was no longer there. The girl was saddened by this news. Peeperin came to his senses and took on a calm appearance. He quietly agreed with the girl. It was quite likely that their kingdom, Gloria Septim, had already been lost and wiped off the face of the earth. The man wanted to find out the status, did not understand what status they currently had in this world, because if the country had disappeared, they should not have existed either. But judging by the unchanged equipment, everything was fine. The man looked up and said the word status, but nothing appeared before him. Lala looked at him questioningly because she did not understand what he was doing. He did not know how to find out his current state. Nothing worked, so he bent his legs, pressed his feet into the ground, and tried to jump. Thanks to the strength of his legs, the boy jumps up several dozen meters, and his companion is struck by the unexpectedness. The boy calmly looked down at the ground. Peeperin realized that his basic parameters had not changed. He thought about it. After all, if the jump height remained the same, one can assume that the other parameters remained unchanged as well. After landing on the ground, the boy asked the girl what her status was. It turned out that both the girl and, it seemed, all his other subordinates had the same status. The boy understood, the statuses had not changed. And the boy pondered how strength and magic had changed. From these thoughts, he looked at his palm. After that, he immediately cast a fire spell. A bright and small flame quickly flared on his palm. Pepperin saw the fire that flared up and realized the magic worked, but he wanted to check one more thing. Hyperon immediately used a higher-level spell, Giant Flame, but nothing happened. Later, the fire still did not appear. The boy decided that since nothing had changed in his strength parameters, he could use all his spells. But as soon as he understood everything, only beginner-level magic was available to him. Now he clearly knew the place where they found themselves was the real world of the game Might and Magic, and also the initial stage of its base. The dwarf Pepperin and his 6 subordinates were brought here. He remembered all his subordinates who looked like him were representatives of 7 failed races such as Elf, Dwarf, Harpy, Goblin, Titan, Cobalt, and Wise Demon. The boy realized Gloria Septim no longer existed, and although the parameters remained the same, magic became limited. It worked only at the beginner level. Then the boy awkwardly turned to the subordinate and silently looked at her. Lala was no longer a non-player character, now she was an NPC, which meant that his other subordinates must also have feelings. In the world of Might and Magic, if a player has a low trust level, his subordinates can betray him. Judging by Lola's behavior, her trust remained at the maximum. The man thought the same story applied to his other subordinates. But he did not understand what would happen to them in the future. When they find out that their country no longer exists, they may become hostile to him, and then his subordinates might start a rebellion against him. If this were just a game, that boy would not worry. Suddenly, the door to the room burst open sharply and swung wide. A figure with wings loomed in the passage. The unknown figure screamed piercingly. The man, stunned, looked back at the source of the sound. It turned out that one of his subordinates had arrived. The girl with wings was rejoicing. Her master Pepperin had awakened. She hugged him tightly with happiness. Lala was shocked by the actions of the girl named Venetia. Venetia did not let the boy go from her embrace. The girl was very worried about Pepperin's condition while she was on reconnaissance. The boy was pulled into the embrace of Harpy Finacia until some angry Lala tore her away from him. Pepperin could only awkwardly watch them. Finacia was a cheerful girl with wings. She belonged to the Harpies. Harpies had wings but could not fly. Moreover, their attack power and defense were too low compared to others. Because of this, most players did not like this race. The girl was practically shrieking with indignation because of Lala. The elf Lala couldn't hold back and also got irritated because of Fanacia's rude attitude towards their master. But Fanacia did not think so. She did not believe her actions were bad or rude. Harvey Finacia asked that man with a smile if he was unhappy. To this, Pepperin calmly replied to her that she had nothing against her actions, but Lala forbade such actions towards that man. Lala was shocked by this. She would not let the master ruin Fanacia. Suddenly, someone burst into the room. It was a boy with horns on his forehead. He heard the noise, was confused, and wanted to know what it was about. But soon the boy saw the trio. Seeing Pepperin, he rejoiced. The royal septum had awakened. Ari and Lala clashed with each other to get Pepperin's attention. Pepperin could not greet the boy because Phonasia was hanging on him. The man with horns was glad that Pepperin was okay. Smiling, he informed them. Soon the rest of Pepperin's subordinates would arrive at the hut. His name was Gas, and he was a member of the Goblin race. Goblins were among the list of popular weak races. Of the 7 weak races, they were the fastest, so they could still be used in various situations. Later, a girl named Eerie and a man named Pache entered the room. They informed everyone in the room of their arrival. Then Pache noticed with a smile that their master Pepperin had woken up. Pache is a member of the Kobold race. They can transform into beasts but do not know how to use this ability. They are also called two-legged dogs. Airi is a representative of the race of wise demons. All their features were very low except for high intelligence and magic. Because of their appearance, many players try to get close to them to make them their talismans. Pepperin was glad that the girl and the man returned. He also noticed that his last subordinate was missing. His name was Nobo. The boy wanted to know where Nobo was. And at that very moment, a huge shadow loomed over the boy. It emerged from a silhouette of unheard-of size. It was the Titan Nobo, who had just arrived. Nobo had a tattoo on his face, and this man also wore glasses. He apologized to Pepperin for being outside. Due to his enormous size, the man did not fit into the wooden hut, and Pepperin understood this himself. Nobo is a member of the Titan race. They are huge and strong, but their speed is slow. The power of their attacks is of the highest class, but Titans cannot use it to the fullest. The boy suggested going outside, but Nobo panicked in fear. He could not make his master go out for his sake. To this, Pepperin, smiling, replied that he could not just leave one of his subordinates on the street while he and the rest of his subordinates were in the house. The entire team of 7 representatives from unsuccessful races gathered together. Pepperin, the king of his subordinates, thanked each one for their presence. After that, the guy let his subordinates report on their current condition. Goblin Goose was the first to set off. He headed northeast. The local landscape was preserved. Everything looked the same as before the creation of the Kingdom of Gloria Septim. In the same direction were the caves of Bircham. There they destroyed monsters and built a mine, and now the same monsters lived there as before. Nobo headed northwest. Nothing changed. All the buildings that should have been there simply disappeared. Moreover, the farm near Lake Fauna also vanished. Phonesia rushed west. Once she was sad because she could not fly due to her racist trait, so Mr. Pepperin built her a flying castle, but unfortunately, the flying castle also disappeared. Pache set off eastward. Once there was a pasture corner where a captured dragon was kept, but now nothing remained there. The man recalled, to catch the dragon by the king's order, he had to travel around the whole world. The last report was submitted by Erie, and she headed south. There was the volcano Rufel. On Rufel, there was a place for mana extraction. Erie created it after many studies, but nothing remained. Their hard work simply vanished. Everyone felt this place, wherever it was, reminded them of the past, the very same to which they had returned, where the Kingdom of Gloria Septim did not yet exist. The whole team fell silent at this thought. The boy thought it over. That country really no longer existed in this world. Pepperin also pondered. Suddenly, an idea came to his mind. The boy was considering the decision to disband his team. In the game, of course, he was a good king of the Kingdom of Gloria Septim. He allowed his subordinates, but this boy did not know if he could do the same when everything became reality. At this thought, the boy was a little afraid of the future. Pepperin was confused by the problem that had arisen. He did not know what to do. After all, he was now an ordinary student in his world, so eventually the boy would not be able to escape this, and then his subordinates would hate him. The team was considering their next steps. Pepperin continued to think about disbanding the team. That boy could manage without friends, and he had all the necessary knowledge for life. So he rejoiced and decided to tell everyone about the expenses. Just as the boy was about to announce this decision, the elf Lala suddenly interrupted him. She assured everyone that there was no need to worry because Pepperin was already with them. The girl was confident in the boy. Pepperin was surprised by her words. She managed to ruin his plan. Lala did not stop and continued speaking. The boy, starting from a small wooden hut, was building up a base, the number of subordinates, and research technologies. He also strengthened them representatives of weak races, thus increasing the number of people he created. Settlements and cities appeared on their basis, and then a country. He was able to conquer other states and in a single generation build the most powerful in the world, the Kingdom of Gloria Septim. All this was accomplished by the great hero, Mr. Pepperin. In the girl's eyes, the boy was divine and majestic. Lala joyfully suggested to the others to follow Mr. Pepperin, then they could revive the Kingdom of Gloria Septim and conquer the whole world. The girl with bright eyes looked at her comrades. Pepperin was stunned by Lala's speech. He could only freeze and stare at the girl in shock. Suddenly, someone supported her words. Lali's subordinates gladly seized her proposal, and for Gus, King Pepperin, ruler of the Kingdom of Gloria Septim, was better than all the others. Phonesia said that if he were their master, he could rebuild her castle in the sky again. Nobo, the Titan with glasses, believed their master would also recreate the kingdom where no one would go hungry. Kobolpache told everyone that he would follow Pepperin anywhere because it was never boring with him. Uri, with a warm smile, decided to explore advanced technologies for the rapid revival of the state. Pepperin was shocked by the enthusiasm of his subordinates. He listened with his mouth wide open to their excited speeches. It would not be good for him if this continued. The boy turned pale. He fully understood that he was in a situation from which he needed to withdraw. But even when he understood everything, it was impossible to refuse in such a situation, because the team looked at him with admiration and a smile, and the boy felt embarrassed, even ashamed. He was an ordinary Japanese, so if he could not solve this situation, he simply could not accept it. Pepperin clenched his fist. Then he confidently told everyone to trust him. After all, this boy is the great hero Pepperin. They gathered to revive the Kingdom of Gloria Septim and conquer this world. Thus began the world domination of Pepperin. The second conquest of another world begins with taming the 7 weak races. First, they needed to do 3 things. The guy hinted to everyone about their next tasks. Ari read the hint. She told everyone that first they needed to earn money, then obtain food and water. They also needed to collect building materials to expand the base. The man praised her. Lala pondered Ari's words. She asked everyone what they should do. First, they had to distribute duties among themselves. They could split into 3 small groups. The first was responsible for food and water, the second for supplies, and the third for money. Now they needed to assign tasks to everyone. After dividing the groups, Group Number 1, Harpy Phonesia and Goblin Gus, was responsible for obtaining water and provisions. Team Number 2, responsible for acquiring building materials, consisted of Titan Nobo and Echabald Pachai. Only the third group remained. It included Dwarf Peberin, Elf Lala, and Wise Demon Airy. They were all to be responsible for acquiring money. The team distributed duties well, but Nobo was worried whether everyone could safely leave the famous base with the septum and leave it unattended. But since there was nothing valuable in their current base, everything was fine. Of course, the likelihood that the hut would be destroyed was not 0, but it was not difficult for them to restore it. Peperin was not worried about this. Having said that, the man informed everyone about the start of work, so each team took up their duties. After some time, the third team, Airy, Lala, and Peperin, set off southwest to where the Cyclops' lair was located. Their main task was to replenish the treasury with money. Lala enthusiastically recalled how Mr. Peperin once defeated the Cyclops. It was a wonderful memory for her, while the others awkwardly remained silent. In the world of might and magic, dangerous bosses and cool monsters have lairs hidden in different places. There are also many rare items they can be sold for a good price. The boy knew if this world returned to its original state, the Cyclops' lair must definitely remain. If their statuses had not changed, it would not be difficult for them to defeat them. Lala was impressed by the boy's cleverness. She expected nothing less from him. They needed to act faster and deal with the monsters. Soon they reached the place they needed. Sharp rocks protruded everywhere and the remains of creatures lay scattered. The fog barely drifted around. When the boy approached closer, he suddenly felt a foul smell. He immediately covered his nose and realized this is the smell of rot. Now it had become reality and thereby proved that this world was real. The boy was momentarily twisted by it. While the boy was trying to recover from the smell, Eerie suddenly informed everyone that she had seen the Cyclops' lair. It was not far from them. Team Number 3 gathered tightly, shoulder to shoulder. They stood and impatiently looked towards the lair. Later, the boy noticed one of the Cyclops. His distinctive feature was a horn on his head. The monster was sitting and doing something, but soon turned to the team, noticing that they were watching him. He grabbed his weapon and immediately approached the team. The Cyclops was huge, holding a stone club with spikes in his hand. The monster loomed over Team 3. He had only one eye, a feature of his race, the Cyclops. This single eye was fiercely staring at the newcomers, more precisely at their crew. The man realized, in reality, the monster looked much more complex than in the game. It was like breaking into a house without permission, meeting the owner and taking all the most valuable things. Cyclone roared loudly and raised the stone-spiked club. The monster was luring the boy and wanted to attack him with his weapon, but the dwarf Peperin was able to easily dodge his strike. The club's blow shook the ground for a moment and stones scattered to the sides. The boy could do nothing about it. Everything was for the money he needed to restore the lost kingdom, Gloria Septum. Then Peperin instantly drew his weapon from the sheath. That boy was completely focused and serious. Then, pushing off the ground, Peperin rose and flew together with the Cyclops. All his actions were aimed at attacking the monster. The Cyclops was stunned by the sudden movements of this boy. Peperin flew past the Cyclops at lightning speed, simultaneously inflicting heavy damage, and because of this the monster lost the hand holding the rocky club. The man wasted no time and spoke to Eerie in a serious tone. While the roaring Cyclops was distracted by pain and the loss of his limb, Eerie directed her palm at the monster. Then the representative of the race of wise demons used a spell of magical flame. At that very moment, a flame flared on her palm. A fiery wave swiftly flew at the monster. He didn't even have time to dodge. The devastating fire had already caught up with him. The monster fell exhausted after the girl's attack. They managed to defeat him. Eerie sighed with relief as soon as she saw the fallen body of Cyclops. Lael was a little sad that they managed to cope without her. Yuri and Peperin paid no attention to her sadness. They had to quickly gather the treasures. In the cave, a chest with treasures and bags of valuables awaited them. But when Eris tried to open the chest, it turned out it was locked and would not yield. However, with the skill of Leyland the violinist, everything would open without any problems. With magic at Lola's fingertips, various types of master keys appeared. Then the girl, approaching the chest, began to open it quickly, changing the master keys each time. Soon the chest was opened thanks to the magic of the elf Lala. Inside were many precious stones, gold coins, and also books on magic. Eri, as a representative of the wise demonic race, immediately grabbed the books. She found out that the chest contained a book about training in storm magic. Although the training was at level 5, it was still better than level 8 fire magic. While Eri was reading the contents of the book, Lala managed to gather into the chest all the things they could sell. The nearest city to the lair was Korez. The team set off towards Korez to sell their things there. Meanwhile, group number 1 Harpy Fanasia and Goblin Gus was in the forest. They were the ones fetching water and provisions. It was still light and Gus and Fanasia went deep into the forest. The boy and girl stood in the giant shadow of some creature. They wondered if they could eat their opponent. Gus told her that they wouldn't know until they tried. Their opponent was a monster in the form of a giant snake. She stared hungrily at team number 1. Phanesia thought that their master liked such things, but although he did not know Pepperon's food preferences, Gus did not think so. The girl was worried if the master were dissatisfied, there would be no point in attacking the snake. Goblin Gus smiled and told her that Pepperon would most likely be pleased with what Phanesia would bring. From this, the girl immediately got excited and believed the boy. In that case, she would lead the monster to Pepperon. Phanesia quickly moved towards the serpent-like monster. Gus didn't even have time to realize how the girl was already ahead. The boy understood with embarrassment. The girl had already disappeared in the direction of the snake, but he was not worried to defeat such an enemy. One Phanesia was enough. Then he relaxed, turned away from the battle, and dived deep into the forest for water. The boy was confident and calm about his companion. Yet Phanesia, with a smile, rushed at her opponent with lightning speed. She wanted to catch prey for Pepperon. Phanesia rushed to the snake, and her fast run lifted us almost to the level of the monster. The snake was stunned by her sudden, lightning-fast movements. For a moment, it lost orientation. The girl teased her rival with a smile, not stopping for a moment. She moved lightning-fast in different directions and continued to attract the rival's gaze. The snake got bored with the girl's mockery. It immediately got angry and rushed at Phanesia, opening its jaws with a whistling hiss. She instantly disappeared, dodged his attack, and didn't even let the monster touch her. The monster was struck by the girl's sudden disappearance. The snake, confused, spun in all directions, trying to find the girl. Thanks to her lightning-fast movements, Phanesia suddenly found herself above the monster. Instantly, the girl drew 2 swords from their sheaths. She struck the snake with a double blow, and it painfully opened its jaws. Soon the snake fell under Phanesia's blows and was destroyed. The girl, calmly writhing on the ground, realized she had indeed won. Phanesia said with a smile that the job was done. They got the necessary supplies and fulfilled their duty. Meanwhile, Titan Nobo and Kobold Pachai represented team number 2. They needed to get building materials. Nobo told his companion that first they needed a tree only, then could they do something. This is where Pachai's sword comes in handy, but Pachai Cobalt did not think so. After all, the Pachai sword was created to protect important people, not to chop trees. The man told him he would not forgive anyone who stood in Mr. Pepperoni's way, and even without any duties, he could not just do nothing. Nobo arrogantly decided that Pachai's sword was useless and only good for chopping trees. He told his companion that it couldn't even cut trees. This angered the Kobold Pachai. The man immediately drew his sword and began to refute the Titan's words. Heth, captain of the Gloria Septum strike team, could do it. With a broad and predatory smile, he told the Titan's Nobo that cutting down trees was an easy task for him. Pachai became insanely angry that Nobo did not believe him. He threatened to silence him with his own hands, but Nobo was not afraid of this threat. He felt that Pachai's hand would be weaker than Phanesiu's. The second team had no other ways to cut trees, so they could do nothing. Pachu, thinking about his master's welfare, began cutting trees with frustration. The man frowned and swung his sword like an axe. Kobold Pachai quickly cut through the tree trunks, showing how sharp his blade was. After a while, one could only hear the sharp clashing of weapons and the crack of flying pieces of wood. The speed of Kobold Pachai was incredible. No one noticed how the lumberjacks could already assess the chopping power of Pachai. Soon everything ended. In the place of the forest where they took the timber, only stumps of fallen trees remained. Titan Nobo, seeing how many trees were cut down, warned the man he must protect nature. Pachai sighed heavily. After the logging, he had no strength left. At the very beginning, Nobo was supposed to tell Pachai the correct number. Then, after cutting down trees, they still needed to get stones. The cobalt pocha reacted with surprise. He thought they had already finished extracting building materials. But it turned out that there were not enough trees themselves. For construction, it was necessary to gather other useful materials as well. The tired cobalt pokey gloomily drifted through this message. Later, the second team came to the rocky cliff. Pachai, looking at the rocks, decided that they also needed to be processed, but there was no need for this. Nobo could take up the extraction of stones himself. Having prepared, Titan Nobo took a stance for a strike, and then lightning fast he rushed at the rock, leaving a crack on it. After the strike, rocky rock began to break apart and it was torn into stones. Pachai expected nothing else from the Titan's strike. That was the peculiarity of their race. The men began to gather the scattered stones. Each picked up a piece according to their size, but suddenly they felt a tremor. The earth was shaking from something. As it turned out, the stone monster suddenly began to transform right from the stone. Team number 2 immediately realized a stone golem appeared before them. The golem, standing up to full height, quickly moved toward Nobo and swung his fist. The Titan in glasses, holding a stone in his hands, noticed the movement of his opponent. The golem struck the Titan. The ground shook, but in a moment the rock golem was stunned. The man did not suffer any injuries from his attack. He calmly, with one hand, caught the rocky fist of his opponent. Nobo, although he looked calm, did not underestimate the enemy and was serious. At that moment, the kobold Pacha jumped up, leaping out from behind the golem. He swung his huge sword and roared simultaneously. The man struck the golem in the head. After the strike, Kobold Pacha, the stone golem, collapsed and was destroyed. The man's attack power scattered its body and it crumbled into stones. Pacha landed on the ground after the attack. Along with him, the stone remains of the golem fell to the ground. Nobo was completely absorbed by something. The man told his comrade that they were very lucky. Kobold did not understand anything. So Titan Nobo, holding the stone in his hands and examining it, explained everything. He noted that it turned out stone golems are much easier to process than ordinary stones. Kobold Pogi was glad about this news. After all, it was to their benefit. The men took all the materials they needed, removing stones from the golem. Meanwhile, the third team, Dwarf Pepperin, Elf Lala, and Harpy Eerie, was responsible for collecting money for the treasury. Eventually, they reached the city. The city of Quarz was surrounded by a stone wall built with one entrance and exit. They first wanted to sell all the gems and only then take everything they needed. Eerie also wanted to buy a bunch of spell tomes. The third team was approaching the gates of Quarz. They were guarded by sentries. They still needed to buy tools that would help with construction and material processing. The man agreed to this. They had to buy as much as possible they could after selling the treasures. Later, a guard noticed them. He stopped their group. The man noticed that the girls belonged to the race of elves and the race of wise demons, while he belonged to the race of gnomes. These were representatives of unfortunate races. Pepperin did not object to this. And for the man, it was too suspicious. Representatives of weak races walked freely. The guard had a recognizable feature: 3 eyes. He looked at the team very unfavorably. Perrin never understood what seemed suspicious to them. The boy recalled with confusion, only orcs were not allowed into the country. Their race was not supposed to be affected. They were supposed to pass. But the guard, looking at them suspiciously, continued to speak. He decided that these were runaway servants who had stolen their master's belongings and fled. Pepperin was stunned by the guard's assumption. The boy began to deny the guard's assumptions. After all, they came here only to sell the treasures obtained from the lair of the Cyclops, but he did not believe them. The man informed the team about their detention. The 3-headed guard wanted to investigate the group and find out their true identity. He called colleagues to catch representatives of weak races. Suddenly, the team found themselves in a difficult situation. The 3-eyed man tried to stop the team because of their suspicions. He ordered his colleagues to seize the boys. Now the team had to figure out how to get out of this unexpected trouble. The gnome Perron understood the simplest option is just to run away. Making an enemy out of the neighboring city is not the best start for the game. The boy wondered if he should leave this place. Suddenly, a scream cut him off. Outraged, Lala turned to everyone at the top of her voice and declared to the guards that they had treated the famous hero, the founder of a great power, Mr. Pepperoni, rudely. This boy was so shocked he was twisted out of shape. Pepperin realized that their condition had worsened, grabbed Lala by the hand, not letting her continue her anger, and rushed away together with the team. The guards, coming to their senses, were surprised to realize that the suspicious team was fleeing from them, so the men immediately rushed after them, pursuing them. Elf Lala was confused by the actions of that man. She did not understand why they fled, but he did not answer her. He needed to find another way to get out of this situation. Eri, continuing to read the magical book about studying storm magic, noticed that the situation in the city of QRS had changed slightly. Gasping, the guards of the city of Juarez could not catch up with the team. They did not catch them because they were too fast. The team broke free from the pursuit. The man knew that the city they were approaching was definitely Corsand. He was sure representatives of the races of dwarves, elves, and wise demons should get a chance to visit it. Of course, their weak racial manifestation was looked down upon, but Eri was never rejected as recently happened. Elf Lala also recalled, when she came to Korra's, she always entered calmly and bought something. The boy pondered. He believed that this could have happened because the world of sword and magic had become real, and along with it, its rules had changed. During the game, despite the weak race, Pepperin was never left abandoned. But if now all weak and unsuccessful nations are treated the same way, they will not be able to trade with others. The city is an important place where plans for plantations, laboratories, and other facilities needed for base development are found. They had to come up with something to get it as soon as possible. The man decided that the attitude towards their unsuccessful races had changed. It was very problematic for them. Thai would no longer be able to trade in cities. Elf Lala, with a predatory look, suggested they simply capture cores, but Dwarf Pepperin and Iriath, representative of the wise demons, decided that this was not the best idea. They had another option, but Pepperin and Lala were unlikely to be able to carry it out. For this, they needed Eri. If she flicked her tail, ordinary people would not be able to recognize her. Eri could pretend to be a human and buy everything they needed. Elf Lala was worried that the guards would recognize her, but they could not see Eri's face. She covered it with a book, so everything was fine, and if it doesn't work out, they can still come up with another solution. At first, when Eri entered the city, she needed to sell all the jewelry from the chest. Then she needed plants for the plantations, for the research center, for a decent-looking house. They had to be bought. Eri also had to take as many books as possible for studying agricultural and architectural skills, as well as magical almanacs. She still needed to buy a backpack to carry tools for construction and material processing in it. Eri, a representative of wise demons, routinely noted down the entire list of necessities on a scrap of paper. If the girl did not have enough money for everything, then she had to choose the most essential items. The girl understood everything and wagged her tail. It was one of the signs of her race of wise demons. Then she placed the chest on her head and headed to the entrance. Lala wished her luck. Approaching the entrance to Kors, the girl talked with the guards for a while. They hesitated because of her appearance, but she managed to get through. The guards were amazed, an ordinary girl effortlessly carrying a treasure chest. The boy sat down and thought about how to allow Eri some time to shop. It would be good to have some camouflage magic, but that's level 3, so it's unlikely to be sold in the city. Lola, with a fierce look again, suggested to her master to capture the city of Chorus to have future prospects. The guy was a little surprised. She was warlike and the girl was very different from the version in the game. But it was still worth remembering this city did not exist on its own. The city of Chores was subordinate to the state of Linsel. So, given their low-level magic, if they go to war against an entire country, there is almost no chance of victory. Lala understood everything, but she was angered that some simple guard was rude to her master Pepperin. She had enough anger and annoyance. Frowning, the girl began biting her nail. Sometime later, Yuri arrived with her purchases. Pepperin and Lala were still waiting for her near the entrance to the city of Qers. They were glad she came. Ari effortlessly dragged a huge backpack stuffed to the brim. She told them that the jewels were quite expensive, so the girl could buy everything she needed with their help. Pepperin wanted to find out how things were in the city, but inside almost nothing had changed. Everything looked the same. However, Ari noticed that she did not see any of their 7-week races. Three-eyed ones still held power in Juarez. After the boy heard the information from Iria, he pondered, if the same situation occurs in other cities, it will become a problem for them. Failed entries. Suddenly, an incredible idea struck him. Ultimately, this world of magic and swords was no longer a game, so the boy did not need to rely on any specific races. Previously, he adhered to the rules established in the game, but now everything had changed. Pepperin had a brilliant idea. The inspired guy wanted to return to the Gloria Septim base as soon as possible and proposed a new plan to the team. The girls agreed with his proposal. After some time on the Talshem plain, they found a sea of everything: building materials, plans, books, tools, supplies, and water, literally everything. Now they had everything they needed. The platform was stunned. His subordinates managed to gather so much in just a few hours. This is what it means to have skilled subordinates. Others looked at all the things they managed to collect. Very soon, the harpy Finasia flew up to the boy. She was terribly hungry after work. Her stomach was already growling from hunger. Then Paraparin looked at the food they had gotten for lunch. The boy was surprised that they caught a snake for food. In front of him lay a huge piece of snake meat hanging over the dwarf. Feniziagi said she had to try very hard to defeat the snake-like monster. The girl was waiting for praise from her king. Pepperin praised her but was himself thinking about whether snake meat could be eaten. He did not know if it was even suitable for food. But no one knew exactly how they would eat the snake meat. Goblin Gas suggested cutting it into pieces and then frying it. Kobold Pache could handle the first part perfectly, so Gas suggested it to the man. Kobold Pache almost skipped with indignation at Gus's proposal. Everyone always thought that his sword was some kind of blacksmith's thing. Goblin Gus did not object because he believed that it was so. Their clash disappeared even before it began because both guys were distracted by the girl. Harpy Fanasia, holding swords in her hands, suddenly announced to everyone that she would take care of cutting the meat. The girl instantly, lightning fast, rushed to the meat. At that moment she spun her two sabers. Finasia activated the skill, 1,000 Strikes. While the girl used her skill and chopped the meat, Gus and Pache had to scatter in different directions to dodge her endless blows. Each new strike repeatedly hit the snake meat until it began to crumble. In a moment the girl returned to her team with a smile. She awaited their reaction to her skill, 1,000 Strikes. Everyone noticed that the pieces of meat she cut were perfect for frying. Irai, seeing this, lit a fire with the flame of magic. Now they would not have to worry about food. Pache and Gus were still stunned by the recent incident. They verbally attacked the girl with anger. Because she could have harmed them with her technique, they were a little angry at Finasia and she apologized. Later they kindled the fire and the perfectly cut meat was sent to the grill. Soon a delicious aroma of roasted meat spread around the campfire. Fanasia's mouth watered from the rising aroma and she impatiently waited for the meat to be ready. Iria noticed that the meat was already cooked and ready to eat. Lala was the first to jump out to taste the meat. She took a piece with a fork, tasted the roasted meat, and suddenly opened her eyes wide, surprised by the pleasant taste of the dish. Even without marinating, the taste of the large snake meat was distinctly noticeable. After Fanasia's technique called 1,000 Strikes, which chopped it into pieces, it still stubbornly resisted phantasmally. Elf Lala, tasting the meat, pretended to say to them, "Although it has a strange aftertaste, the dish is still edible." The boy knew although she reported it calmly, she herself looked as if she had never tasted anything more delicious. Eri soon brought a portion of fried snake meat with pepper. The boy took it awkwardly. He found it a bit strange to eat such a dish. But as soon as he tasted it, he immediately realized with surprise. Meat turned out to be incredibly tasty. Unexpectedly, the meat turned out to be quite tasty. The whole team began devouring the fried meat and enjoying its pleasant flavor. Later, the fire went out. The lunch break was over now. They had to start building the base. Everyone was inspired. Everyone was busy with their own tasks. Someone was searching for blueprints. Someone was starting with woodworking. Everyone except Pepperin. He just stood with his arms crossed, watching them. When this world was a game, not reality, his subordinates did all the construction and other work. Pepperin did nothing, so he paused to think for a moment. Suddenly, the elf Lala approached him. She unexpectedly brought this boy a wooden chair so he could rest on it. The boy accepted the offer and sat down. Even when everything became real, Pepperin could only sit and watch. Although this world was now real, his subordinates managed without him. In the game, the guys quickly and easily set up the frame and built the house. It was impressive to him. But the man who sat idle just watched everyone bustling and absorbed in construction. Because of this, he felt bad and ashamed. Eventually, this world was no longer a game, so Pepperin decided to try it himself. The boy, leaning on the wooden chair, began to get up from it. Dwarf Pepperin cheerfully approached his team. This time their help was needed. He wanted to help out. His subordinates immediately noticed him coming and looked at the approaching man with surprise. And at the very moment the boy approached his subordinates, the girls categorically refused his help. Dwarf Pepperin was shocked by their instant refusal. Elf Lala did not want their master to participate in such trivial matters. The boy could not even respond to her. Then Eri joined Lala. She also agreed. The boy was not supposed to do this. Elf Lala, caught in a tragic pose, understood with admiration that the boy was so kind and always tried to understand their feelings. But everything was fine. Working for him, she and the others were filled with boundless happiness. Even if the task turned out to be difficult, the fair-haired girl with clear eyes enthusiastically told the boy about it. So Lala and Ari again suggested the boy sit on a wooden chair and rest. The gnome Pepperin awkwardly accepted their offer. Each of his subordinates was busy. Some studied blueprints, others carried necessary materials, and someone else was erecting the building itself. Only Pepperin, sitting on the chair, watched him with interest. The boy thought that unlike hunting monsters, construction was trivial work. He did not think about it. During the game, he constantly had to hunt non-stop, but soon evening came. It got dark outside. By evening, everything was ready. The main building was transformed from a simple hut into a luxurious residence with several floors and a tower on the roof. There were also lantern pilasters with fire, fields with garden beds for future farming below. There was also a well and a storage with supplies. The boy was stunned by the new look of his settlement. Even though everyone had excellent building skills, the subordinates quickly erected the base. Harpy Phoenicia wanted to ask Pepper what to do next, but it was already late, so that boy suggested continuing everything tomorrow. From tomorrow, they had to start developing the base. The terrible Irie, a representative of the race of wise demons, was tired all day and began yawning from exhaustion. Pepperin thought about how to find new subordinates for his base. Elf Lala, hearing this, pondered and got confused, because finding new subordinates for the base was the hardest and most troublesome task of all. After all, the level of their base was quite low. Moreover, according to the rules of Gloria Septim, only representatives of 7 unfortunate races can join them. So only titans, elves, harpies, dwarves, goblins, kobolds, and wise demons could do this. The girl's words made the boys open their eyes. He was stunned to hear about the rule. Only representatives of the 7 weak races could join his base. The boy thought that the game Sword and Magic, even after it became a real world, retained his passion for racing. Dwarf Pepperin was determined to cancel this ban for the future of their kingdom. The man was about to say something about it, but he was immediately interrupted. Goblin Gus informed everyone that King Pepperin had done a lot for the races that everyone else had rejected, so they must adhere to this rule. Pepperin was just surprised. Kobold Pacha and Titan Nobo also agreed with Gus. They did not want to see anyone except their 7 failed runs. It will take a lot of time, but they had already come to terms with it. Dwarf Pepperin could only freeze in shock. Earlier, he raised the game's difficulty level, and to raise it, he only needed to take representatives of 7 unsuccessful races to his kingdom, and now others would consider it his lifelong dream. The boy shivered at the words of his subordinates. The state was no more now, was not the time to stick to the rules. Lala suddenly called out to him, and he flinched. Pepperin calmed down and stopped being nervous, but at the same time the boy could not tell everyone that he was now ready to be friends with representatives of other races, because if they rebel again, it would not end well for him. So the young man, coughing with a forced smile, agreed together with the rest of the subordinates to adhere to this rule. No matter how long it lasted, Gloria Septim was for them a country of 7 failed races. The base heard joyful cries directed at the boy. Pepperin decided to continue uniting the 7 unsuccessful races. Since he chose the path, he can only keep going forward on it. The next day, everything began. In the morning, the sun shone brightly from above, sending its rays everywhere. The team gathered in one place early. Gus and Pepperin stood by the board. They presented to everyone the plan of their future actions. The team needed to raise the basic level. There was still enough work. It was too early for them to relax. Goblin Gas laid out the plan for them. The current base Gloria Septim was only level 1. To reach level 2 and upgrade the settlement to village level, they needed a laboratory, several dozen houses, 50 residents, and other additional conditions. Almost everyone was sleepy. Only Lala was boiling because it was Gas himself who was helping Pepperin with the explanation. According to the design, they needed to build even more houses. Now the main goal was the development of architecture and gardening, as well as the search for new inhabitants. Pepperin suggested Iri to refer to the research. The girl, not fully awake yet, agreed with the boy's idea. Pepperin noticed that she looked very sleepy. The girl could barely get anywhere. Gus knew that Iri had been dragging since early morning, so Pepperin suggested his team divide the duties among themselves. After that, they had to split into 2 groups, those who would go with him to look for new subordinates and those who would stay at the base for construction and security. Lala was waiting for this. Malaysia came out of her sleepy drowsiness. The elf Lala wanted to calmly suggest Pepperin become his companion on the journey, but the harpy Phanasia interrupted him. She quickly and loudly announced her candidacy. After that, the boy noticed and agreed. The atmosphere changed immediately. A gloomy Lala, in a voice breaking with threat, told the others that he hoped there was still a free spot in Pepperin's team and did not allow others to take it instead of him. The subordinates scattered from the girl awkwardly gathered into another team just not to anger Lala more. Nobo and Gus would solve the housing issue and Pachai would guard their base. So Pepperin had no choice and was forced to offer the rest of the girl to join him. The elf Lala gladly accepted the proposal of his master. Suddenly Harbifancia noticed a crowd in the distance was heading straight towards them. Soon the crowd emerged from afar. Calmly and threateningly they were walking towards them. There were many men with scars and weapons. They carefully examined the team with a predatory, threatening look. Among them, at the front, stood a dark-haired man with an eye patch. He approached them with a smile, holding a weapon on his shoulder. Gnome Pepperin was calm. He understood that these were bandits and was not worried he would have no trouble driving the bandits away. Suddenly the boy realized the bandits were people, not monsters. He did not know if he could eliminate them. This became a problem for him. He recalled how in the game the boy had smashed a bunch of opponents, but although it was in the game, in reality everything looked completely different. The boy pondered. Suddenly he stopped worrying about the problem that had appeared, because he had already felt something similarly in a fight with the Cyclops. He dismissed the thoughts that had recently been troubling him. The bandits glanced slyly at the crew. They noticed that they had appeared on the Talsham plain quite recently and had already managed to build a settlement. The men also saw that the crew consisted only of representatives of unsuccessful races. Usually representatives of races like them were sold into slavery by bandits, but they will make an exception if they pay 1,000 gold coins weekly. Pepperin was not scared. That man, closing his eyes for a moment, calmly exhaled in response to their proposal. Pepperin did not want to agree to such a terrible deal. He drove the bandits away because he considered paying attention to them a waste of time. The boy easily pulled the bandit's hand off himself. The bandits did not see a threat in this boy. At his words, the blonde and the bandit leader only burst out laughing. One of them grabbed a weapon. The blonde aimed the sharp tip of the saber at the boy. He gave them a choice: pay 1,000 coins weekly for their own lives or be simply eliminated. Pepperin also gave them a chance to retreat, and then he would have forgotten all their stupid deeds, but the man laughed wickedly and only grew angrier. He, waving his weapon, rushed at the boy and tried to attack. And the blonde man didn't even have time to swing. He was attacked from behind. He only felt the blow in shock, and it hurts. The attacker was the goblin Gus. The man quickly retaliated and quickly covered the opponent with damage. Gas, already calmed down, noticed that he was not letting the opponent finish speaking, but he did not care. The blonde fell from the blow of this guy. The robbers froze in surprise upon seeing this. Goblin Gus thought he had finished off the opponent too quickly, but Pepperin had no more words for him. Gus himself was not going to back down peacefully. The armed bandits were silent. They were afraid. In a dark tone, Pepperin ordered his subordinates to attack the uninvited guests. At that very moment, Kobold Pachai, Titan Nobo, and Harpy Phanasia vigorously charged at the enemies. The battle began. Phanesia quickly launched an attack on the opponents with her swords. Titan Nobo, with his titanium strength, struck the bandits and they, screaming, were forced to flee. Pachai instantly dealt with all the enemies. The bandits realized in horror their opponents, although belonging to a weak race, turned out to be very strong. They felt how dangerous their position in the battle had become. Suddenly, someone caught their attention. They noticed an unarmed girl of the elven race. In their eyes, she looked like easy prey. Therefore, the bandits decided to attack her. They sneaked up behind her at lightning speed and were about to strike. And even before they managed to touch her, one of them was already wounded. It turned out that near the elf Lala a magic circle had been drawn. The girls summoned a saber from there and rushed at the man. Elf Lala whipped her sword by the hilt. No matter how futile the races were, they could still use basic magic. The fact that the enemy was unarmed made them already consider him weak. The girl, with a completely calm face, took a fighting stance and, holding the saber aimed at the opponents, launched an attack. The bandits surrounded Lala and moved straight at her. They were angry because of the whole story and decided that she would do nothing against them with her pathetic sword. Everyone wanted to attack because she looked the weakest of them all. Suddenly the girl took a step. Soon she approached her opponents with quiet and quick steps. Lala quickly and calmly dealt with all the bandits. For her, they were a pack of fools who decided they could stab the blade into her master, Pepperin. The girl was not thrilled about this. For now, Pepperin silently watched the whole fight from the side. A terrible scene was unfolding before him, but he remained completely calm. The boy thought it was due to the influence of cold-blooded mastery. In the world of magic and swords, there existed a blood-related possession, and the higher its level, the easier it was for the player in battle. But if this skill was low and the player still fought against a large number of enemies, then if at least one of them was destroyed, the player received an abnormal status and could not move for some time. But his cold-blooded mastery reached the highest level 50th. Even after he destroyed 300 enemies, he still did not receive any abnormal status. The boy thought with relief that thanks to this skill, he would be able to calmly analyze everything during the battle as well. Pepperin hoped that he could maintain his composure in similar situations. He continued to watch the fight. On his side stood the bandit leader quietly, but with an expression as if he was about to get scared. Their strength frightened him. The man did not understand why such losers in races could be so strong. He wanted to learn their names. The man stepped on a stone, and because of the sharp sound, Pepperin noticed the bandit leader. The man immediately got scared. His legs could not hold him because of fear, and he fell. Pepperin, holding a sword in his hand, noticed that the bandit subordinates did not spare their strength in the fight, so he simply stood behind and watched. The boy raised the sharp end of the sword at the bandit leader. He wanted to hear the last farewell words of this man. The frightened man could only stammer and beg for help, but mercy was not given to him. The boy quickly finished off the bandit leader. Later, they completely dealt with the uninvited guests. Although bandits unexpectedly stood in their way, they had to return to the original plan. Lala and Phynesia would go together with that boy to look for the subordinates. Other subordinates of Pepperin said goodbye to him and reminded him to take care of himself. The boy said goodbye to them in return and accepted their farewell words. The group headed north. At the foot of the mountain stood an elven village called Ashirs. Pepperin wanted to find volunteers there, those who would agree to move to another place. Harpy Phynesia laughingly told them that she hoped they would not be as scary as Lala, and this immediately offended the elf Lala. Lala did not understand how scary she looked, but when it came to Mr. Pepperin, it was better to stay away from her. Pepperin thought that was true. A few minutes before the arrival of Pepperin and his companions, night had already fallen. It was dark outside. The village of Ashirs was quiet. Only an ominous voice and screams accompanied him. Someone ordered someone to sit silently. It turned out that all the inhabitants of the village Ashirs were captured and tied with a rope so they could not move. They were beaten and frightened by what was happening. An unknown robber learned from his accomplices. They had already cleaned out the entire village Ashirs and taken all the inhabitants captive. Night fell and a full moon appeared. It flooded the entire forest district with light. Alongside the cuckoo's call, the mournful voices of the harpy Phynesia echoed. She was hungry. Due to hunger, the girl barely managed to keep up with her companions. The boy did not understand her condition. She had eaten a whole roasted boar for lunch, and soon they were to reach the village of Ashirs, so she had to endure it. Elf Lola walked ahead of the group. She was sure that the village Ashirs was nearby. Pepperin tried to support the tired and hungry Phynesia as she began to whine. She was feeling sick from hunger. Later, Lala noticed a light. It was the fire of torches standing at the entrance to the settlement. It brightly illuminated the outskirts of the village Ashirs. Phynesia joyfully rushed towards the village. She wanted to eat something. Lala tried to stop the girl, who ran away. The boy realized that they could only reach the village after midnight, but it was quick. Harpy Phynesia, approaching the entrance to the village Ashirs, joyfully greeted the villagers of Ashirs. At that moment, her wings spread with joy. The girl hoped she could finally eat. But then she fell silent. The teenager noticed with surprise and horror. The village Ashirs was destroyed. Scattered fragments of destroyed houses lay everywhere. Someone had attacked Ashirs. Soon a man's voice sounded. With an evil smile, he asked the others how many elves they had caught. One of the lizard tribe bandits replied that he had seen someone else in one of the houses. The three-eyed racialist was wearing a mask. He did not want to return to the village Ashir because of one elf girl, and they themselves were uncomfortable moving after the battle. There was trouble, so he intended to ask his comrades to move aside. The company held the wounded villagers in their hands. The bandits grabbed all the elves, put chains on them, and forced them to go somewhere with them. No one was let go. If any of the captives lagged behind, the bandits punished him. Lola watched with deep horror as her relatives were humiliated. She realized the robbers had captured all the elves from the village Ashirs. Pepperin silently observed the event. Pepperin knew who was behind this company. All the bandits who were in the village Ashars belonged to the BBC group. BBC was an abbreviation for Black Company. In the world of might and magic, they were engaged in human trafficking, selling terrible substances and forbidden magical books, as well as organizing assassinations and kidnappings. Largest criminal group. Most likely, the bandits were going to sell the captured elves from the village of Ashura to someone for hire, so they grabbed each of them. Pepperin himself was once a member of the BBC and achieved considerable success. When he played cruelly, he was driven by the fact that it was just a game, although he still felt bad. The man thought if he got involved with these guys, he would effectively sign his own removal, so they should not touch the bandits. Their famous septum base had not even become a village yet. The full moon shone brightly in the night sky. Pepperin was sad that he could not make these elves his subordinates, but he could do nothing. They had to avoid unnecessary risks, but as soon as threatening voices of Lala's people sounded, she wanted to stop the bandits. The girl was sure next to her was a great hero, Pepperin. In her eyes, he would never be silent or stand aside while this clash with the elves was happening. The boy did not want this. Even Fanasia was angry because of the destroyed settlement Ashers. She angrily agreed with Lala's words. After all, the bandits committed horror in this settlement Ashers. Now it was impossible even to eat there. And the girl had other goals: food. The bandits did not consider them their enemies. The anger of weaker races did not concern them. The team began to mock them. Pepperin realized, unfortunately, they had noticed this team. A humanoid lizard mocked Pepperin. He did not consider him an enemy because he belonged to the dwarf race, and the masked bandit had never heard of a hero with such a funny name. Lala heard the words of the robber and flared up at the man's rudeness. She wanted him to answer for what he said. The girl looked at him with a dark, heavy gaze. Suddenly, another robber joined the conversation from the three-eyed race. The man with the third eye looked at the girl. He was dissatisfied with her actions and did not consider her an equal opponent. Pepperin felt uneasy. They no longer had ways to avoid the fight. If they dealt with them and left no witnesses, then everything should be fine, although he did not like it, and that guy was not entirely sure. And he ordered Layla and Phanesia to destroy the bandits. Pepperin moved forward to the BBC group. The man told the girls that no one should be allowed to escape. With a grim look, he said this to his subordinates. The girls, wildly angry at the bandits, accepted their master's order. Lala and Phanesia looked at the men with predatory, grim gazes. Together with the guy, they confidently moved towards the enemies. Meanwhile, it was also night below, very calm and quiet. The rest of the subordinates sat in one room at one table and wondered which race the new inhabitants would belong to. Cobalt Pachi initially wanted to gather an army capable of protecting the future state, Gloria Septum, so he decided that about 100 kobolds were needed for this. But Nobo did not agree with the man. While drinking tea, he said that the guards needed people who could use not only strength but also brains. Pachi was outraged by the words of the Titans. He grabbed the hilt of his huge sword in anger, but Titan Nobo calmly continued drinking his drink and reading the newspaper. Goblin Gus felt a bit uncomfortable because of their quarrel. So the guy shifted his gaze to Iri. The girl eating was completely absorbed in reading a magical book, and next to her stood a pile of plates. She decided that the inhabitant was from the village of Ashers. And that meant that they would all be elves. The men shuddered in shock. The newly arrived inhabitants were most likely representatives of the elven race. They froze when the girl suggested this. The other subordinates, except for Ari, became worried after the girl's words. Silence fell in the room, and everyone awkwardly fell silent. Ari calmly continued reading the book. The men hoped that the elves would not be as scary as the elf Lala. Meanwhile, somewhere in the dark night in the village of Ashers, endless cries of pain were heard. Phanesia and Lala quickly dealt with the bandits. The immobilized opponents lay after the fight. The rest of the bandits were stunned by the girl's strength. They wanted to find out who they were, as they clearly did not look like the offspring of failed races. Absolute power hung over the bodies of the enemies. The girls looked at them with a predatory gaze. The bandits were scared. They considered the girls real monsters because of their terrible strength. Meanwhile, Pepperin dove deeper into the village. He thought he could entrust the girls to deal with the remaining bandits, while he himself would focus on rescuing the elves. The village of Ashers was strewn with debris after the attack on the inhabitants. Somewhere deep in the village, all the captured elves were held. The chained and oppressed residents of Ashers were weakly pinned to the ground. 2 bandits stood nearby. The men smiled fiercely as they counted the captured peasants from Ash I Rays. Everyone was in place. Suddenly, one of them, like a rhinoceros, heard a scream coming from nearby, and it instantly caught his attention. The bandits noticed some noise coming from the entrance. The rhinoceros man began to make out the silhouette of someone in the distance. In a moment, the silhouette fully emerged before the men. They realized it was a boy from the dwarf race. The man calmly walked towards them. Pepperin also noticed everyone and finally found the captured residents of the village Ashers. But his path was immediately blocked by robbers. They poked this boy with the sharp end of their weapon. Boldly, they wanted to attack and find out the reason why he ended up here in this place. However, instead they themselves felt the consequences of the attacks. Pepperin dealt with the opponents in an instant. Quickly and calmly, he went to where the elves were captured, wanted to know their condition. One girl from the elven inhabitants wanted to talk about her condition, but the boy had no time for it. First, he had to figure out how everything was arranged with them to free the immobilized inhabitants of the village Ashirs. While the boy was dealing with the ropes, they were too tight. One of the robbers recovered after Pepperin's attack. Rising to his feet, he moved towards the boy with heavy steps. The robber got angry that he was defeated by the dwarf, so he swung his weapon and wanted to attack. He rushed at the dwarf with a fierce shout. The girl with short hair warned Pepperin fearfully, but he told her not to worry. Pepperin was unconcerned about the robber's attack and did not even turn to the man. Fantasia and Lala instantly prepared to attack the enraged and stunned man. Fantasia held swords and Lala aimed her weapon at him. He felt as if some strange presence was lurking behind his back. The man wanted to turn to them. His actions became a signal for the girls to start an attack to eliminate the enemy. As soon as they landed, the girls rushed at him and immediately dealt with that man. He fell to the ground exhausted from the blows of their attack. Pepperin, without turning around, thanked the girls for their help. The boy was completely absorbed in untying the rope near the residence of Ashers, while the villagers were in deep shock at what they saw. All the elves kept their eyes wide open in amazement. Lala, holding a saber in her hands, smiled and told her master that they had destroyed all the enemies. As if she had not attacked the bandits a minute ago, Venetia was not as happy as the elf. The girl was very hungry. The neighbor with short hair, Asher, who had previously warned Pepperin, noticed. Lala is the same race as her and the other inhabitants. They are all elves. Pepperin addressed his subordinates. They needed to split up and free all the captured elves. Lala gladly accepted the order while Fantasia held on with her last strength. This boy was a ray of hope for the inhabitants who had broken free from despair. Soon all the inhabitants of the village Ashirs, where the representatives of elves lived, were freed. They surrounded the team and looked at their benefactors. Phoenicia completely immersed itself in food. The girl quickly devoured the food brought by the elves, thanked them, and said that food is an important part of life, but it was not worth spending so much on it. Phoenicia, although she said this to the villagers, did not stop and kept chewing. The residents of Ashirs were grateful to them, so they did not spare the food. Lil quieted down a bit before them and tried to stop the harpy Phoenicia, but it quickly swallowed all the food. The girl who led the residents was happy. She did not know what would have happened to them if not for the team, so the elven leader thanked the rescuers, and because of this, Pepperin felt uncomfortable. He awkwardly informed them that as long as he was alive, he would not allow such horrors to happen to anyone. After all, it was a given. The girl, a representative of the inhabitants of Ashers, told her her name. Her name was Lucy. She also headed the village of Ashers. The main feature of her appearance was a headband she wore on her head. The elf Lucy wanted to learn the name of her benefactor. But Pepperin was not even given a chance to introduce himself. Everything had already been said for him. His subordinate introduced him to everyone as the savior of the 7 races. Lala enthusiastically began to tell the inhabitants of Ashers about her king. She told everyone that he was the king of Gloria Septim, and also Mr. Pepperin was the greatest hero in the world. The boy felt uncomfortable with so many titles. The girl continued, although their country had perished, they were trying to revive it thanks to their incredible talents. Lala informed the villagers. As a first step, they came to the village of Ashirs to look for new subordinates. Pepperin found it hard to call this place a village. After Lala's words, Lucy began negotiations with its inhabitants side by side, whispering. Later, the girl and her villagers asked the team for permission to bring all the people from the village of Asher under their command. Pepperin and his subordinates froze at the request of the elf Lucy. Their eyes widened in surprise. They could not believe the words they had just heard. The boy asked the girl again if indeed all the inhabitants of the village of Ashers would join him under his command. The elf Lucy agreed with the boy. Yes, it was true. Pepperin, of course, thought that only 2 or 3 would join him, but he did not expect the entire community to participate. In the game, he had never been forced to subjugate so many inhabitants. About 60 elves lived in the village of Ashers. With such a number of inhabitants, his settlement would rise to level 2, and from a settlement it would turn into a village, which was to their benefit. Lucy was troubled by the boy's long silence. She thought they would become a burden to the rescuers. The boy, coming to his senses, disagreed with this. He told them that their village Ashirs is quite far from the current Pepperin base. Keeping two settlements separate will be difficult, so the residents of Ashirs will have to leave their place of residence. Man wanted to know their opinion on this matter. They did not care about it. The village was in such a place where the BBC would have a hard time finding them. That is why they evaded attacks for so long, but all unsuccessful raids attack. The words of the elves Lucy, Lala, and Fanny sounded maliciously, and Pepperin awkwardly blurted out that the company was not suitable for them. He felt embarrassed because he was in the same group in the game. Lucy continued to speak sadly. No one could help them because other races did not like them and attacked unfairly. Even if the peasants stayed here, their enemies would come again, and that would be the end for everyone. Peasants from Ashirs were sad. The elder of the village Ashirs asked Lala about Mr. Pepperin. She wanted to know if the guy was really the savior of the 7-week races. For Lala, yes. After all, Mr. Pepperin was a big guy for the girl, their only chance, whom everyone pushed away. The girl remembered this guy when he was a king. The residents of the village Ashirs looked at the boy with admiration. They also began to think that Pepperin was wonderful and looked at him with shining eyes full of joy. Pepperin felt embarrassed for a moment. The boy was confused by their attention. He noticed that Lala reacted to him the same way. Pepperin decided that all elves are the same and do not differ. Lala continued and informed everyone. From now on, they would no longer be considered representatives of the 7 failed race. They are inhabitants of Gloria Septim, the land of the 7 elite races. Lucy listened to Lala with delight. She was inspired by the girl's words. They could lead to a first-class race, not a failure. The girl immediately fell to her knees. She turned to Pepperin again, but now Lucy called him the village head. Lucy, bowing to him, asked the boy to take under his leadership all the inhabitants of the village Ashirs. Together with her, all the villagers also knelt and bowed to the future master. The boy was surprised by this. Every resident of the village of Ashirs, although recently having experienced that terrible incident, now looked at their rescuers with hope. They aspired to a bright future for their kind. Hypron was stunned. He had no idea that the search for subordinates would go so well from the very first time. At this rate, the country will be restored very soon. He will do it faster than when he was playing the game. The boy joyfully informed everyone that from now on every resident is a member of the Kingdom of Gloria Septim and its subordinates. Lala and Phanasia smiled happily at his words. So now he had 62 elves at his disposal. Joyful cries continued to spread throughout the entire village of Ashirs. Everyone was happy to become members of the Kingdom of Gloria Septim. 2 days just a little before Pepperin and the girls returned, it was already daytime, cloudy outside, and everything at the guy's base stood quiet and calm. Even before his arrival, the excellent architecture of the base had already been built. A large number of wooden houses were erected in the shortest possible time. Moreover, Eri, a representative of the race of wise demons, was able to conduct research at this time. Stacks of documents and books were already lying all over the table, just waiting for the moment when Pepperin would read them. The guys only had to wait for their king. Gas, a representative of the goblin race, was exhausted and pale. They had already completed all the tasks given to them by Pepperin. Goose, Goblet, and Aurea look at the empty warehouse and have no idea who ate everything to the last crumb. Goose is shocked at how could they consume in 2 days what was meant to last 2 weeks. He says the king could return at any minute. Goblet urges him to calm down. Eri asks to take it as a test of his composure. Gas snaps at the shout and says that he should have thought about it earlier, not eaten all the supplies. The boy takes pieces of meat from the man and the girl. They are outraged. Gobalt wonders if the girl knows some spell or scientific trick to increase the amount of food. The girl says that this is neither magic nor tricks. Another man replies they still have a few days before the king returns. Gas says they will manage somehow, then asks about new subordinates. Mabo says there is no need to worry. Even if someone joins, it will only be a couple of people at their level. He guesses that the king will forgive him, but the elven girl will be furious. The girl says that usually in such situations there is collective responsibility. Gobalt agrees with her and Nebo asks to be quieter. Friends hear a voice from behind. Their comrades have returned. Nabo turns around and says that they just remembered the rest of their comrades. They have come. The girl and the boys notice a crowd of elves and are quite surprised. Phonesia is glad that they finally got there. The main character asks them for forgiveness for his long absence. Gas recalls his friend's words about the arrival of several people. The other men are also surprised. Pepperin asks what is wrong with them. Gas explains they are shocked that they brought so many people. The main character says luck struck him and 62 elves from the village of Ashura agreed to join them. The elves bow and respond that they are pleased to meet them. Nobo praises Mr. Pepperin for a good job. Gas also pretends to be glad to see them. They nervously chuckle. Lala asks what happened while they were gone. Nobo and Gas are scared. The man lies and says that nothing happened. He returns to Pererin and gives him the research he asked for. She says everything went well. The main heroine praises her for a good job. The girl quietly laughs. Gas is angry. Gobbled also addresses the main heroine and says that while he was away, no villains appeared, but he is always ready to defend their country. The man speaks and indeed formulates it well. Gas immediately understands there is good news in these two and shifts his gaze to Nobo, thinking he will have to apologize. The man laughs. He asks the protagonist to help with the buildings. The boy agrees and decides that he is about to be knocked off his feet. Gas indignantly gnaws at himself from the inside. Fantasia says she wants to eat properly and goes for supplies. Boy gets scared. He asks her to wait and advises her to wash up first. The girl says it's better to have a snack first, but Gas insists and calls her dirty. Suddenly a chest falls in front of him and he exclaims in surprise. The protagonist thinks to himself, he has risen one level higher and the settlement has turned into a real village. He exclaims, then concludes, the system is the same as in the game. Venezia rejoices at the treasuria chest with treasuress and Gas says he was scared. In this chest, they can find plans for the reconstruction of the main residence. The main residence is the very first house. By renovating this dwelling, it can be converted into the house of the village elder or the city elder in the town. If the dwelling rises to the level of a mansion, the pilgrim will begin to show more interest even to the appearance of new subordinates, and this means that Gloria Septim will return to its former glory. Pepper slightly increases the size and silently wishes for this to happen sooner. The elf advises celebrating both the level up and the new friends. Finija exclaims joyfully, but Gas is still scared and tries to dissuade his friends. The protagonist notices this and turns to the girls, ordering them to take the elves home. 2 days of travel have exhausted everyone. The girls agree and ask the elves to follow them. Gus exhales evenly and the protagonist rushes to find out what is happening. The boy admits they have no food at all. Pepperoni exclaims in amazement. Gus apologizes. Harry says they shouldn't have eaten so thoughtlessly. Gobble agrees with her. Gas shouts that they are mocking him. The protagonist calms everyone and says, what's done cannot be undone and they will still have to look for food because there won't be enough nuts for everyone. His subordinates ask him not to tell Lala about this. In his thoughts he reflects they fear Lala more than their leader, Pepperin. He orders them to go eat. They agree. The main character thinks to himself that Fantasia and Eerie are real gluttons and no matter how you look at them, you wouldn't say so. And he also thinks, if they don't manage in time, this problem will turn into a real disaster. He says they will somehow manage, but the protagonist completely forgot about one thing, those who will immediately appear as soon as they learn that Gloria Septim has become a village. About a month later, the main character finds himself in a world of sword and magic. Magical elves greet him and wish him good morning, responds the same. Their base level has increased, his subordinates adore him and he is a good king. Their shack has now become a first-class home. Pepperin remembers that in the game he was very happy when he got his first real home. They still have a lot to do. The main character is sitting under a tree. He says, sometimes you just need to be alone and think. It is hard for him to relax when someone is constantly walking right next to his ear, and even a king sometimes needs silence. Suddenly someone calls him and he flares up. The boy shouts that something strange is happening on the outskirts of the village, and the girl points with her finger in that direction and orders him to go there quickly. The main character yawns and decides that these are bandits again, so they need to quickly build a wall, otherwise there will be no peace from below. He hears screams. They are ordered to call the leader. Pepperin does not understand what is happening. He goes outside and declares that he is the boss here. A man stands in front of Lala and Gobeltan, the one he saw, is stunned. The elf asks if he is from the Spalding family and what they want from Mr. Pepperoni. Goblet says he is pretending to be a human. The knights behind him are outraged by his treatment of their commander. The man says he does not care. He shouts that he is the commander of the order serving the Spalding family, Lo Plastar. Lo asks them if they know whose land they are standing on. The commander replies that it is the property of Murata Spalding, the head of the family. He even says that they will not be able to build a village here and demands that they leave immediately. The protagonist thinks to himself, he has completely forgotten about them. He assumes it is about taxes. As long as it was just a village, they didn't care, but as soon as the village level was raised, it angered them. He understands. They want their people to pay taxes for this plane, and if they refuse, they will send a huge army, and that will be the end of it. He calls the family conscientious taxpayers and believes it would be better to follow their example. He recalls that in the game the tax was 5 of the annual income. The girl from the elven lineage says that they do not care about the Spalding family because they are from the immovable kingdom of Gloria Septim. The protagonist does not understand what she is talking about and exclaims with a question. The girl screams that if they want to get rid of them, the man finishes her sentence and implies, then they will have to use force. Pepperin whispers indignantly from behind. He thinks to himself they are still escalating the situation and this is bad. They need to continue developing the village, otherwise everything will become much more complicated. He turns to his subordinates and orders them to stop. He apologizes for being late and introduces himself, Pepperin, the village elder. The man does not understand if he is a child or a gnome. The boy says the second option is correct. He notices at first glance the village is full of elves, but if you look closely you can see other races too. The man wonders how they managed to gather so many unsuccessful races together. Gobalt is angry at his words. The protagonist calms him down. He asks the commander-in-chief what they wanted. He replies that this is the property of the Spalding family and they must leave. The man suggests sitting at the negotiating table. Then the man asks him again and says he has an idea. The land was initially empty. The protagonist asks why not found a village here for the benefit of the Spalding family. He asks if he is ready to swear loyalty to the family. Pepperin says that is exactly what he meant. Lo agrees and orders his subordinates to bring a scroll. Everyone hands it to him. He proclaims the start of negotiations. The protagonist is told to forgive and wait for him. He suggests continuing at his home because this is an important matter and they need to settle in and calmly discuss everything. Lo agrees and calls 2 soldiers to follow him, ordering the rest to wait. The protagonist orders his subordinates to wait here because you will talk to him alone. Lala says that Lo is leaving with a guard, so she needs to go with him. Pepperin responds negatively. He says that while they are negotiating, no one should approach the residence, so he asks to pass this on to everyone who is absent. The main character thanks Lala. The girl smiles happily and says she understood him. His words ring in her head. In fact, Pepperin just doesn't want them to be present at the negotiations where he is clearly losing. He doesn't want to lose their loyalty. The man pushes him to start the negotiations, although he admits the only thing left for them to talk about is the tax rate. The protagonist calls it a game. Lu says that 40 of the entire harvest in this village will be given to the Spalding family, then they will not attack or drive them out of the village. Pepperin is very surprised. He demands 40. He thinks to himself, 40 is too much, and wonders where such generosity from the tax officials came from. He finds out if there is a way to reduce the tax. The man replies that the village is full of inferior races who are useless in war. He believes they can only be used for agriculture. The main character thinks to himself that all this is happening only because he is weak. He notices things are going badly. Pepperin notes that they recently repelled bandits and agrees they are indeed weak but says they can still fight. Lu says that weaklings are weaklings and that in battle they will never be useful. The protagonist bursts with anger. He has a plan to destroy them all to the last one, but he abandons it and notes that it sounds just like Lala's idea. He calls himself to calm down. Lala sneezes outside. Iri suggests that she is sick. Suddenly, the protagonist thinks it would be good to have a reference history to prove everything to him. He says that on the Spalding property there is one unresolved problem they can fix. He offers a bet if they solve the issue. The man agrees to lower the tax rate. Lu asks what he means. The main problem is that the Air Force is a direct challenge to the security of the territory, and probably someone nearby has a shelter, but they are unlikely to be able to deal with this problem. The protagonist asks if he is ready to lower the rate if they find out the location of the Air Force base and destroy them. The man asks why he offers what he cannot do. The chief proposes a tax rate of 10. The man does not understand what he is talking about. Pepperin says if they destroy their shelter, then the rate will have to be reduced to 10. The guy says that if they do this, they will be in direct contact with the BBC, a risk they are ready to take because the game is worth the prize. He asks the man how he feels about this idea. Lu laughs but agrees, calling it interesting. The protagonist asks if he is telling the truth and he answers affirmatively. He gives them a month to complete it and says, if they fail, the tax rate will be 50. Pepperin is surprised by such a big bet. The man says that if they act sluggishly and only provoke their anger, they will start looting even more. He explains that they are asked to deal with the weakest races and this entails a much greater risk than theirs. The man asks if he is confident in his strength and reminds him about the 40 tax. The young man indignantly stops him and asks to wait, saying they can help with something else. The man replies that they do not have enough problems to lower the tax rate. The protagonist thinks to himself what to do since he decided that other problems unrelated to the Air Force could be solved instead, receiving a lower rate. There is no choice only to act. But the hero realizes no matter how high he is, simply destroying the Air Force base will not work. The man asks if he is ready. The guy asks for a minute and says he will return later and answer. Lou objects and says he will have to make a decision right here, right now. The man is silent, then exhales. He is forced to agree and accept the terms. The man wishes him luck in developing the village and paying taxes and says he is waiting for news on how things are going with the Air Force base. The guy watches as the troops withdraw. He falls onto the bed and says he has no idea how to explain all this to others. Pepperin insists that it is all to reduce the tax from 40 to 10%. The man suggests, saying he will be considered crazy and his reputation will be ruined. He also remembers the elves from Arshers were already attacked by the Air Force and he thinks they will want revenge and understands it looks like coercion. He assumes that this can be called a mission to free 7 times from the oppression of the Air Force. Protagonist sighs heavily, the elven girl sighs after him. Eri asks the girl about her heavy weight and says it does not seem like her. Elphiga replies, everything is fine, the demon will leave soon, and says that she understands everything. Lala stops her, the friend asks what happened. The girl says she already knows everything and then shouts that she wants to be even more useful to Mr. Piper. Uri says that now everything looks normal. But the girl denies this and says that it is not enough. She recalls, earlier after meeting the commander-in-chief, she tried to stay close to Mr. Pepperin, but he ordered her to stay away from him for some time. Lala is angry. Mr. Pepperin has some problems and she absolutely cannot help him, and because of that she feels ashamed and upset. Eri says that no one expects anything from her. The girl does not understand what she is talking about. The demon suggests that it is not about her and says, there is always someone near Mr. Pepperin, sometimes he wants to be alone to think. The girl also tells her not to be nervous and Mr. Pepperin will turn to her when he needs her help. Elphiga rejoices at the words and thanks her, assuring that she will stop whining and do everything in her power. Yuri's wave rocks the girl after him and she thinks that she should keep herself more restrained. Lala rushes forward and thinks that she will continue to serve him. Suddenly she is called. The elven girl asks what happened. The girl says that everything is bad. She breathes heavily. The elven girl with horror on her face says that her sister was kidnapped by the aviation forces. The girl asks what they need to do and whether they should tell Mr. Pepper about everything. Lala asks Lucy to calm down and says that the king is busy now. She asks her to let her tell him everything herself. Lucy says that this morning the elven girl and her friends went to play in the forest. A little later, one of the boys asked his friends if they had gone too far. His girlfriend agrees with him and says it might be dangerous. The girl of elven descent insists everything is fine. Their sister was allowed. The boy wonders what they will do if monsters appear. The girl is afraid of his thoughts about monsters. Their friend says there are no strong monsters in this forest, so it is safe here. She replies that she heard colorful rabbits live here and they are a very rare species. Her friend asks again. The girl of elven descent thinks that Pepperin will probably be happy if they bring him home. Suddenly she notices one of them and calls her friends to look there. She calls him Cutie and the other girl asks how they will catch him. Elphiga takes everything upon herself and goes out to the rabbit, begging it to come to her. The animal slowly approaches and touches her hand with its nose. Reese encourages him not to be afraid. Scaring the rabbit at her, she laughs and says she is ticklish and that they are probably friends. The second girl says she also wants to hug him. The boy notices another one and suddenly someone else appears in the clearing. The children turn around and see men. One of them asks what they are doing here. He stomps and tramples the rabbit. The boy understands this is the Air Force. The girl asks where they are from. The man says that such young men will become excellent servants. The second man agrees with his comrade and says that these children can be taught a lot. One of the children steps forward and says that she can handle them. She asks her friends to return to the village and tell the ruler and everyone else about everything. The friends doubt, but the elven girl shouts for them to run away. The children agree and run to the village, saying they will call for help. One of the men shouts at them not to let go. The girl looks at them firmly but trembles. The bandit tells her not to be afraid because the place they are going to is a real paradise. The men laugh. Now in the very same place lies only the knife of the elven girl. They understand it was here that she was kidnapped. Lala asked if they were sure it was the Air Force. They respond that everything is fine and say that they had the same bandanas as those who attacked their village. Nabo says things are bad. Gobel agrees and suggests selling her into slavery or driving her to death by labor. Lucy exclaims as if not fully understanding something. She grabs Lala and asks her to save her sister. The girl agrees and says they will go to save her immediately. Hobbolt asks to wait and says they must inform the king about this. Vala is sure he would have supported them, but Gas would not. He says that Mr. Pepperin once said, "The Air Force is not the most pleasant company. One thing is to fight on your own territory and quite another to break into their lair." He says that Mr. Pepperin has to decide something along those lines. Lucy is disappointed and asks what will happen to Riz. Seeing this, Gus makes it clear that he is confident Mr. Pepperin will gladly help under any circumstances. Elphicka agrees but says that even guessing what the Lord is thinking is nonsense. Still, she believes they need to return to the village and ask for his help. The girl agrees with her. Lucy silently cries. She takes the knife her sister held and thinks about pepperoni. The girl remembers her sister and hopes for the best. The main character says that everyone saved their younger brothers from Gloria Septim and destroyed the Air Force hideout. The man clenches a sheet of paper in his fist and declares that nothing will come of it this way. He is too crooked. He says they will destroy their secret hideouts and he can't think of anything. The boy suggests it should be something pompous. Pepperin recalls Lou and regrets that he didn't have even one word like his. He rehearses, saying that now they will destroy the Air Force storage. The man introduces himself as Lala and asks himself why they should do it, then answers, "There is no reason, but it still must be done." He imagines the girl rushing forward but realizes the futility of it and goes mad. He doesn't understand how to do it. Suddenly, he notices movement outside the window. He does not understand why it is so noisy outside and cannot figure out why everyone has gathered under his window. Lala says she knows. He is busy but asks to talk to them about something. The main character believes that he has finally learned about the tax rate and he is overcome with fear. There is simply no other reason to gather for a conversation. He hears anger in their voice and fear overwhelms him even more. He feels embarrassed, but he wants to throw off this nasty trembling and use his royal privileges to order them to destroy the RAF hideout. Then they will take 10 of the tax rate. He is Pepperin, king of Gloria Septim, and if he said something, he will do it. Lala tries to say something, but the protagonist interrupts her and asks everyone to listen. He declares that they will invade the Air Force hordes, and they themselves know why and for what reason. He shouts that they must defend their future and now let them go and prepare for war. All the people are silent. He thinks to himself, maybe they won't like it, but they will regret nothing. Lucy cries and says that he knows everything. The protagonist does not understand what she is talking about. The girl sincerely thanks him, and the king still does not understand what she is talking about. People shout that their king is their savior and support Pepperin. Lala believes that Mr. Pepperin is right and they must start preparing for war to save Reese, who was kidnapped by the Black Company. The protagonist asks himself this again. He remembers Reese is Lucy's sister, the former leader of the Archers, and keeps in his mind the image of her as a friendly elf. They even sometimes played together. The man thinks that the Air Force wants to kill the girl in revenge for what happened in the village. But they took care of all the bodies and the enemies were not supposed to find out that they did it. In the end, the protagonist thinks that it is incredibly convenient. He understands. There is no need to explain anything and popularity only grows. He wants to gather people, save her, and destroy the Black Company base, goes to the residence and says that it is time to make a plan. The king orders Lala and others to follow him. The people agree with him. In the holdings of Spolding in the Elapazaric Empire, there is a place. A girl of elven lineage slowly comes to her senses. Her whole body hurts. She remembers how the guys from the Black Company treated her badly. She seems pressured by questions about her whereabouts. Someone greets her, calling her the newcomer. A figure behind is angry. They brought an elf again and says that this time they could have brought a better race. The girl of elven race asks where they are. The girl says that this is the Black Company's hideout. Reese assumes that she was also kidnapped. She answers affirmatively and says that they attacked her village and dragged her here. He also adds that everyone who was with her is already dead. The girl says that here they don't even let you risk thy drive you to work until you're half dead, and that as soon as you arrive here you can say goodbye to the outside world. She tells the girl that she is in hell. Girl of elven descent is frightened. Rice says she needs to get out of here, but the stranger laughs and calls her stupid. She points to the chain on her leg. The girl asks who she is. The stranger replies, if you want to ask something by name, first introduce yourself. The girl says she is serious. The girl introduces herself as the dwarf of Pan and says that she herself is also from a lower race. The dwarf asks her to calm down and says that soon she will start working again, then there will be no time for suffering. Rice asks what they are forced to do. The lady replies that they are in the mine and the Air Force captures people and forces them to work for free. She asks if she knows what explosive rock is. She asks again, implying that she does not know this girl, and explains, it is a stone that explodes if provoked strongly, and it is often used to make weapons. He was recorded as a dangerous mineral, so only a few people from Spalding are allowed to extract it, but the people from the Black Company don't care. The girl says the services are easy to replace, but here it turns out, either they die in an explosion or die from overwork. And the girl gnome smiles and says that they will have time to be friends until they die. The elf girl is very scared and silently looks at her. In the village, they discuss the plan. In short, he says he wants Fanasia and Pachai to take charge of guarding the entrance, break into the alarm system, and turn it off if possible. Two agree. Then the protagonist continues and says, as soon as the guards inside the vault weaken, Lala and Eri will sneak through the east entrance and rescue Riaz by destroying the vault. The subordinates agree with him. He orders the Nobos and elves to defend the base. He says he regrets they cannot go with them, but they will do everything to take care of their home. The Nobos turn to Mr. Paraparin. He says their main mission is to save Reese and does not understand why they cannot just leave immediately after completing the rescue mission without destroying the vault. The protagonist is nervous, not knowing what to say. The girl of the elven race fiercely demands from him what he is saying there. She thinks that these are exactly the monsters that destroyed their village, and they cannot just take this girl and pretend nothing happened. The girl says that if you are already going against them, you have to beat them to the ground. Gas replies that he understands and that he was just curious. The protagonist mentally apologizes to Gas and thinks, if it weren't for the tax rates, he would definitely be on his side. He looks confusedly at the crowd while they shout to destroy the Air Force. He says that if everyone is ready, they can start. People loudly agree with him. In the Black Company's hideout, a man says it's time for them to get to work. He urges the girl, get up and move, and the bandit pokes with an order, move forward. The elven girl mentally decides that only weak races are here, they were probably all kidnapped. She doesn't notice the new friend and gets lost in guesses about where the dwarf girl is now. Suddenly, everyone is ordered to stop. The bandit orders them to let him pass. The man growls at the girl, angry that she is looking instead of working. Riss says he doesn't know what to do with her. The man tells her that since she is new, she has to observe how others work and learn from them. He also adds, every time she fails and makes a mistake, she will die. These men are the group leaders, pursed. The girl doesn't understand why she isn't given a little more attention during training. She understands that she has to look for light red areas on the rocks, but doesn't understand whether to hit the dark or the light ones. She thinks to herself that she has to try anyway and reminds herself to stay away from the light red zones. Suddenly, something explodes behind her. She sharply turns around and is horrified to see the bodies. One of the men shouts at them not to wrap him, and another replies that there is no point in that and orders to give the body to the monsters outside. He says it's better to die from exhausting work, and that death from a bomb is inevitable. The girl asks what is wrong with them. She is insanely angry and shouts that they don't know what life is. The girl from the elven people doesn't understand how one can treat a living being like that. The girl was angry at him for his rudeness and says that they are not instruments and that they were not created to be used by scoundrels like him. He says that she is cheeky and looks like she needs to be taught a lesson. He reaches out to her, but suddenly a voice calls him. He turns around and sees his new acquaintance, Panna. She smiles and says that they will put everything in order for her. The man replies that she has already thrown him off balance. The girl smiles and reminds him that he himself said he likes it when tools know their job. The girl only wants to give instructions. Press reluctantly agrees and orders her to explain to the girl why she is here. The girl thinks about him. They walk down a dark corridor. Riaz asks what is going on here. Panna orders her to be quiet and go. She stands by the door and tells her to go inside. The girl does not understand but goes in. She sees a punishment room. The girl is shocked to death and asks what she is doing here. The gnome girl says she will not let her out until she is sure that she is really just a working tool. Riz asks her not to be stupid and not to say that she is not a tool. The girl explains she has two options: either stay here and allow her to torture her, or lie and admit that she is a tool. She says that they like to torture people, but if she has to, she can do nothing about it. The girl replies that she will never call herself anything like that. The girl from the gnome race tells that girl that she is incapable of fixing anything. She will not be able to convince them and get everyone out of here. The elven girl objects and says that if they work together, it will work out, but the gnome understands. It is impossible, so one can either listen to them and live longer, or die right now. Riaz is disappointed but admits this is just a workforce for them. The gnome girl calls it a smart choice. Later she returns to Finger and happily reports that the lesson is learned. The man says that they look too happy. The gnome girl insists that Reese's nerves immediately gave out as soon as she saw the camera. Hannah theatrically begins to imitate her. She grimaces, apologizes, and with fear on her face says that she will do everything she says. She immediately turns around and smiling says that the girl ordered her to do everything he says. Rise does not like this. She grinds with restrained laughter and throws that she is a coward, asking who she is. At first the girl is silent, but then, overcoming herself, she says that she is an instrument. The girl from Oven Race sobs. The leader of the Black Company says that this is wonderful and orders her to start work as soon as possible and perform her duties with dignity. He steps away and calls the lady to follow him. She agrees and follows. After some time, the dwarf girl says that she is very tired but considers that the day went well and she is happy. The dwarf girl hopes that her new friend has finally learned the lesson. She puts the bread in her palm. The girl reaches for it, but Pana says Perst gave her something and she decided to share because they are neighbors. The girl turns away and replies that she doesn't care, she doesn't need anything from him. Pana says that she doesn't care who gave it to her, it's just bread. The girl asks her new friend why she agreed to teach her and thinks that she just wants to help her. Still, the dwarf girl laughs. The elf girl doesn't understand her. She says that there is no point in helping her and that she was just flirting with her finger. The girl is confused and doesn't understand what she is talking about. The girl from the dwarf race explains that he is the one who holds this shelter, and if he likes it there, he can pull her out of slavery in the mine to the shelter, and there she only has to clean and bring food. The girl says that if you behave very well, you can even become an official member of the air forces. The girl from the elf race exclaims questioningly. She is interested if her friend wants to join the ranks of these monsters. The dwarf girl doesn't understand what the problem is and asks if she wants the same. The girl answers no and says that she doesn't want to be among those who treat people like things. The girl says that if they continue to work in the mines, they will simply explode or die from exhaustion. She doesn't understand how the girl can say such a thing. The girl from the elven race replies that this is not what it's about and asks if she has any pride at all. Suddenly, Pana remembers her past. Fingers through a harsh voice sound in her head about how they are the workforce and they are ordinary servants. A picture flashes before her eyes. A little girl screams because dwarfs also have pride. The boy agrees and says that they won't let them get away with this. The man shouts if so, they will die. Then the dwarf girl only remembers screams. She is silent, then laughs and says that this approach won't work for them if they want to survive. The girl says that although she is a dwarf, she doesn't look like Mr. Pepperin at all. Pana asks again, doesn't understand who she is talking about. She wonders if he is a dwarf. The girl from the elven lineage answers affirmatively. The girl is sure that Mr. Pepperin will come to their aid and kill everyone. The girl from the gnome race does not understand why a gnome would come to such a place at all. She is angry and says that it is not worth mocking Mr. Pepperin. The lady says that she knows best the weak points of the gnomes and that as a weak people they must be as smart as she is to survive. The girl shouts that Pepperin is very strong. She waves her hand and agrees. At Pepperin's residence, the protagonist sneezes. They ask him if everything is okay, and he replies, yes, all is fine, it's cool outside. Pepperin and his subordinates are already ready. The protagonist calls everyone and orders to move to the Air Force shelter. 2 days have passed since the Pepperin mission and their team set off. Lala asks the protagonist how much longer it will take to reach the shelter. He says it should be somewhere nearby. The girl hopes the elf is okay. Finija suggests deciding the leader with a game of rock, paper, scissors. Gobalt says it's nonsense because he is the team captain. He says that she definitely cannot command, but Phanesia disagrees and claims that she destroyed the last shelter. Lala explodes with anger and tells them to think about Arjus, not nonsense. Phanesia and Gobel agree. About an hour before the protagonist and his company arrive at the Black Company's hideout, the girl tells herself she can't go on like this and hopes to return to her friends soon, too exhausted and worn out. From the second day, Riaz was forced to participate in mining minerals. The work was hard and long, and the fear of exploding at any moment exhausted her not only physically but also psychologically. Suddenly, the lady says it's time not to delay. Riaz does not see what she is doing. She sits so that her back is visible. The girl stands up and replies that she has long awaited this very moment. The girl behind hears a click. The girl gnome turns back and shows her the removed shackles, saying she will leave here tonight. The girl shows her friend the keys to the cell and the shackles themselves, and the elf asks where she got them from. The girl explains that she stole them from Purst. It took a lot of effort, but she did it. The girl says she thought she really obeyed the Air Force and wanted to be with them. She laughs loudly and adds that she was just pretending. The gnome girl says that feigned obedience became liked by them, and then she was allowed to walk around the shelter with them and was told everything about the internal structure. The elf girl asks to be taken with them. The gnome girl asks again and says that her new friend is very tired, so she cannot drag her along by force. Rice replies that she is not so tired that she cannot move. She says she is an excellent fencer and if a fight starts, she will definitely be needed. The gnome girl replies that this is too confident a statement for someone who was captured and is being held in prison. Girl is a little embarrassed. The gnome girl throws the keys and says, if there is a key to her shackles in this bunch of keys, she will take it with her. She declares that she is going to escape from here and clarifies the plan. The gnome girl says that they first need to go to the registration room. Rios wonders what that is. The gnome explains, the base territory is patrolled by security golems and if they spot them it's over. The girl says that if they come to the reception and register as members of the Black Company, they won't be bothered. She also says that every evening, as soon as the lights go out, Prest and the others drink in the control room, so the security will lose vigilance. A girl from an elven lineage removes the shackles from her foot and rejoices. She says, if they manage to lure the golem outside, then they will cope, and she does not understand why her friend stopped her escape if she knows so well. The gnome girl tries to explain something, but the girl decides that she just wanted to run away with her friend. In response, the gnome girl shouts, asks what she is even talking about. She says she was going to go alone, but the elf insisted that she take her along, so she had to. The elf tells the girl that she feels very lonely and smiles. The girl replies, she will take her back if she doesn't stop talking. Reyes laughs, apologizes, and asks her to go to the reception faster. She is still angry. They rush through the corridors. Reyes asks if she knows where they are going. The girl gnome answers affirmatively and says that it is not far from here. Suddenly the elf hears some sounds and asks what the noise is. Her friend says that it is the footsteps of a golem. The gnome girl says he is rushing right here. The girl asks what they should do if they can find them. The gnome girl swears and notices a door ahead. The homunculus passes by. The friends hide behind the door. The girl from the elven lineage says that everything was very close to the end. The girl from the gnome lineage agrees and says that they came across an empty room just in time and in the right place. She also says that they will have to stay here. A girl from the elven lineage notices something. A girl from the gnome lineage says that these golems are much more disgusting than she thought, and with such success, the complaint will come sooner than they manage to get there. Riaz calls her several times, but she does not hear. The girl says that they need to go to the reception. She is interrupted by another message from Reese. The girl from the gnome race asks why she is making noise and asks not to disturb her thoughts. A large golem appears before them and they get scared. The northern entrance to the aviation base shelter, the protagonist says that here they will split into two groups as was planned earlier. He orders the post and finance to enter inside in a minute. He also says, as soon as the alarm signal sounds, they will go inside following him. Fanasia and Pacha agree. Lala turns to them and says she can count on them. Fanasia and Gobbled both ask her to give it to them. The girl says to her friend before entering they need to determine the captain. The man replies that he will not play the game called rock, paper, scissors with her. Phonesia concludes he is afraid to lose to her in such a simple game. Gobbled at first does not understand what she is talking about, but later agrees. The one who wins 3 times will be in power and he will not say a word against it. The girl nods and agrees. The eastern entrance to the Air Force shelter. Pepperin orders Gus to open the door. He agrees and gets to work. He tells them when they get inside, go to the servants' quarters and free Riaz. The protagonist also adds, as soon as she is safe, you can go to the reception and disable the security system. Lala agrees with him. He says that now all they need is to make sure he does not see them and then everything will be fine. Lala asks whom exactly he means. Pepperin explains to her that the triad of sins of the guard is sitting in this chamber. The elf and the gnome are trembling with fear. They tiptoe out of the room. The elven girl says that the girl said, "It is empty here." She sincerely apologizes and explains to her that she did not know that the Thunderboxer's sin is in this room. She says, in any case, they need to get out of here, and if he finds them, it's the end for them. The girl notices a cockroach on the floor and starts screaming. The girl from the elven race tries to cover her mouth and calms her down, saying it's just a cockroach. Suddenly, the door behind them opens and Bouncer's Sin comes out of the room. The girls think it's all over. At this time, Pepperin's team is standing at the eastern entrance. He notices the alarm signal, praises Pachai, and urges them forward. The girls are very scared, but Sin turns around and says something about a sign of superiority. He goes in the opposite direction from them. The girl of the elven race, not believing, insists that they are saved. And the girl of the dwarven race still does not believe. The northern entrance the group by the landmarks where Pachai and Fanja stand. They shout words from the game rock, paper, scissors. Pachai shows scissors and Fanja rock. She is happy because she was chosen and has now become the captain. Gobbled in the background calms down and says that this is only once and in fact he is the real Captain Gloria Septim. She calls him a subordinate and orders him to follow his commander-in-chief. Pachai is outraged at himself. Phaenesia joyfully calls him to move forward. Suddenly the alarm goes off. The man does not understand why it went off after all. No one found anyone. Phaenesia suggests that Pepperin and the rest dealt with it before them. Gobbled reminds her that they said they will enter only when the alarm is raised. The girl replies that then they will just enter, there is no point for them to stay here. She again urges them to keep going. Suddenly someone calls them from the crowd. One of the bandits asks if they are their servants. He is surprised what they are doing here. Gobolt only smiles crookedly and says to him, "Dog." He urges the girl not to slow down. She exclaims questioningly. The man says he is declaring a hunt for him. The bandit asks who exactly he is declaring the hunt on. The girl says it is unfair because she does not feel like a captain at all. Phaenesia shouts at the others, says that she is the main one here and the captain should hunt the enemy. The man tells her that the captain does not need to deal with this petty bandit and that such things are best left to his subordinates. The girl says she understands everything and rushes forward. She shouts that as a captain she must be the first to enter the shelter and leaves it for the rest. The leader says he has no idea what exactly he is getting into. The man shouts that she will not leave just like that. The girl dodges his attack. The Gobel pushes her back. Phonesia asks the man what she should do when she seems to have ended up inside. He says he doesn't know and just let her go. The girl agrees and enters the Air Force hideout. The bandit looks around and clicks his tongue. He pulls back and says that they have just been left without Harpies and Cobalt Servanso, now they can become their new servants. Pachai says that they have only one boss, Mr. Pepperin, and they will obey only him. The robber says that kobolds are just a bunch of chatterboxes. He laughs at the man's decision to hunt him and advises starting with frogs. Pachai asks him again and shouts that it is definitely not necessary. They throw themselves at each other, preparing to attack. In one of the tunnels, the girl asks him what he was doing there. She is surprised that he let them go. This guy is not from the Black Company, is just a guard and a warrior who is here to beat the good guys. She says that judging by how he rushed there is another uninvited guest nearby. The girl assumes it might be Mr. Pepperin and the guys. The girl from the dwarf race says she will keep talking about it. The girl thinks he doesn't need to come here, but the elf woman is angry. Mr. Ruperin teases again. The gnome woman says the registration room is somewhere nearby. He suggests finishing this before Golem finds theme, otherwise they are lost. At this moment the main characters team Lotta, Gus, and Era rushes through the corridors. The main character says, the dungeon with the bow is right beyond the corridor ahead, along the road. He understands it is very soon now. He thinks to himself that if he is the same as that hum in this hall, then the main character suddenly stops. He understands the signs ahead are fake and the first strike will come from behind. The strike comes from behind, but the protagonist deflects it without even turning his head towards the enemy. The elf girl anxiously turns to Pepperin. He says he can handle it himself and orders her to go to the servants' quarters. The girl understands and asks him to take care of himself. Shin laughs and says he never thought anyone could stop his attack from behind. The protagonist replies that this is a technique he has used more than once, so he is used to it. Bankout is confident he will never forget meeting such a strong opponent as him. The protagonist says he has never seen such people in his world, but even in game days there were no fights. The man with a smile on his face says he has fought in more than 100 battles. His opponent exclaims and says he is interested. He admits the main character is his strongest opponent in a long time. He activates a power-up and changes form. The protagonist does not understand what is happening and decides that he will now use this technique. Shin uses techniques, Koronai, Secret of the Six Swords, and Deadly Blades. He says this is a powerful strike. The chance to hit the target is 40 if the damage exceeds a certain threshold, and that it is almost impossible to avoid if it hits you. Health will be absorbed and the game will end. The protagonist smirks boldly and says with such a strong technique only a storm can defeat him. He uses another powerful technique. Shin responds, that's nonsense, ice magic won't stop him. Suddenly his limbs are bound and turn to ice. The protagonist says, if you strike first and make the opponent bleed, then ice attributes will become a very effective strategy. He came across this after about the 50th battle. Pepperin approaches his opponent, presses the sword to his throat and says it's over. Shin laughs, praises him, and suggests putting a full stop. The boy agrees. The dwarf girl and Reese run through the corridors. Finally, the girls find the reception. The dwarf girl shines and calls them inside. The girl agrees. They open the door and see Finger. He greets Panu and says he came here in the middle of the night to see what all the commotion is about. The girl is very surprised, and the man is no less surprised. It turns out she arranged everything. The gnome girl asks him why he is here. He says their fuss played a cruel joke on them. Now he understands that her guiding story was just a trap she used to carry out her plan. The gnome girl is shocked. The elf girl calls her from behind and points at the golem. The girl bursts out in anger and says they have gone too far. The man approaches and says he is nauseated by the thought that the servant tried to surpass him. He calls the girl stupid and beats her. The girl of the elven race screams excitedly. A finger touches hair and he says he will kill them both. A girl from the dwarf race approaches with a plan. She turns to him and he turns around and sees the girl with explosive stones. She says it was a mistake to leave the stones in this room and threatens to blow everything up if he moves. After that, when pressured, she laughs and says she will also die if she does it. The girl screams that she would rather die with him than by his hand. The man tells her, do it if you have the courage. The girl replies that the truth will blow up this stone. The elven girl shouts at her to stop, but she lowers her hand. She silently apologizes to Riz for dragging her into all this. She is glad she will never see her again, yet at the same time throws a stone on the floor and nothing happens. The girl looks surprised that it did not explode. The dwarf girl also exhales in shock. The man laughs and wonders if she really thought they had taken no safety measures when surrounded by explosive stones. He shows the ring and says that these are their measurements. This finger helps disperse all explosive stones within a 5-meter radius around it. Only he, the leader of the organization, has the right to wear it. Finger says as long as he wears this, nothing threatens him. And also this device can be used to detonate explosives even with a small charge like an explosive rock in the hands of a girl. The man shows her the middle finger and the rock explodes in her hand. The finger laughs and says he is sure it is not pleasant but twisted it so it wouldn't tear off her hand. The girl from the elf race runs up to the wounded one. The man says he is not the type to trust people 100, but he trusted the lady 50 and she betrayed that trust. The finger makes her understand she will not die that easily. At this moment, the main character and Sin stand in the same pose. The bandit asks the main character what happened, and he thinks to himself, in the game if he is killed, the base leader will simply slaughter them all on the way. He is gnawed by the thought of what will happen if he is left alive. After considering all possible scenarios, he can say that in 9 out of 10 of them everything will go very badly. He wonders whether it is worth going the way of trial and error. The situation is not at all like in the old gaming days. The guy turns away from him and walks away. He thinks to himself that he hasn't tried to conquer this game for a long time. Sin asks what he is doing. Pepperin says he needs to try something and he is not going to hit him. The main character says that the ice will melt in an hour and then he will be able to do whatever he wants. The bandit does not understand him. The young man explains, during the game he thought that when he comes from behind, the bandit gets scared. He encourages, let him attack from the front. The protagonist leaves, saying goodbye in advance. Sin remains alone and smiling, calls him a funny gnome. The protagonist rushes to the registration room. He decided to get out of prison to Lael and the others. Fanasia rushes down the corridor and wonders why there are no enemies anywhere. She peeks around the corner and sees the whole prison. The girl assumes that Riaz is somewhere here. She breaks the prison bars and, smiling, asks if Riaz is there. One of the prisoners asks who she is. The girl answers that her name is Venetia, captain of the glorious Eptom. She asks if the girl knows an elf named Ruse. The prisoner says she is not in this dungeon. Venetia offers to guide her but remembers she needs to find the dungeon key. She thinks about where she can get it. The girl says she will help them and tells them to hold on. She considers, maybe make a passage without the key. The girl begins to break the wall. At this time, Press says it is time to finish off the couple once and for all. He says they will choose another elf friend. The girl of the elven race will beg for their forgiveness. The man swings at the girl and says goodbye to her. The girl of the elven race remembers Pepperin. Suddenly, the main character bursts into the room. He saves the girl at the last moment. Everyone else is surprised. The girl from the elven lineage joyfully exclaims and turns to Mr. Pepperin. The boy sincerely rejoices that the girl is fine and apologizes for their long delay. He looks surprised that she is a dwarf and says he hasn't seen his relatives for 100 years. The girl asks herself if this is really Pepperin. The protagonist turns to Purst. The man is surprised that he knows his name. He asks who he is. The boy explains that he is the king of Gloria Septum, Pepperin. The protagonist takes a fighting stance. He looks at him intently and says that they will forgive him for interfering in the affairs of his friends and his people. The man did not understand why the king of the state of Zadrapanov needed him specifically. The main character explained. He came to take his subject Riaz and at the same time destroy him and free all the people he had captured. Finger calls him a gnome and shouts in frantic rage that he can only dream of such a thing. He reaches for him, but the protagonist cuts off his hand. The gnome woman and the elf woman are surprised. The man continues on through the pain. The main character says that he inflicted the same torment on his servants. The man looks at him fiercely. The guy replies, for the suffering he brought to Riaz and her family, he will pay with his life. Suddenly the girl stops him and asks to listen. She says that the man ahead treated them like objects. People died before her eyes at his hands and his cruelty knows no bounds. That elf says that is exactly why if you just kill him, it will make everything as if he looks like the BBC. The girl gnome asks what she is saying and explains, if this person dies, they will be doing the world a favor. The girl nods but still says she does not consider murder an option. The protagonist recalls, when he was a player, he had the same thoughts back then his subordinates killed enemies on his orders. Now that the game has become reality, it seems that even his subjects have thought about it. He believes, if the number of subjects increases, he will no longer be able to solve problems by the same methods as before. The girl bows low and says she is very sorry because she dared to impose her opinion on him. Contrary to her, the protagonist replies, the girl is right. They are noble septum and even if they are oppressed, they must not forget mercy towards their opponents. He declares, this time they will spare his life at Reese's request and take him to the Spalding family estate. Lala rushes down the corridor with the others and asks where the cages are. If they don't hurry, Rhys might get hurt. Who says that's exactly why he suggested turning back before they got completely lost. The girl screams that they are the famous septum and the word stop is not in their vocabulary. Gus is not sure but agrees. He calls two of them to be quiet. One of the bandits asks what is happening. He again turns to the captive and asks, who did this? The girl says that she herself does not really understand. Yuri barely peeks in and says this is probably the servant's cell. Gas understands. These are the same thugs from Black Company and he doesn't get why the cell is broken. The man says they need to assess the situation first. He doesn't know where Lala is. Yuri points ahead. Lala kicks a thug and asks where Rhys is. The girl does not understand how they dared and demands to know where she is. Gas says they should have released all the servants first and Yuri says she should have treated their wounds. The protagonist asks the girls why they ended up in the registration room. The gnome girl replies, she and Rhys tried to escape from the Air Force. Now the boy understands why the alarm went off. He assumes it happened because of them. The girl of the elven race confirms his words and apologizes. The boss says there is no need for apologies here, not even for the best. If they keep hesitating here, both the golems and the Air Force forces will rush here and then they will just deal with everyone faster. He asks the girl what her name is. The gnome girl asks again if she was asked a question and introduces herself. Panna Pepperin, thank you sir for trying to save Rhys. The girl thinks to herself that he is the same dwarf as she is, but he defeated Purst with one blow. She understands that the elf was right. He is truly incredibly strong and also notices his handsome appearance and blushes a little. Pepperin notices that the girl has blushed, asks if she is okay and decides that she has a fever. The boy places his palm on her forehead to check. The girl blushes even more and exclaims a question. She says that she does not understand what he was talking about and that she is fine. The main character denies this and says that he meant something completely different. Suddenly Purrs rises from behind. He laughs. The protagonist returns to him and sees a hand with a ring in his hand. The head of the black company says that these weak races are dear to him, and then he will make him regret ever getting involved with him. The protagonist shudders at the fact that he can move and suddenly gets scared, but Fania meets him with a piercing battle cry. The gnome and the girl from the elf race are puzzled. The protagonist cannot believe that Fania ended up here. The girl says that she was looking here for the key to the chambers and found it. She abruptly rushes to hug Riz and says that they could not find her and that she is glad because she is fine. The girl is also incredibly happy. The protagonist asks what happened to Pachai. Fania replies he is her subordinate, so he is a small fry and she is the commander. That is why she came here. The protagonist is confused but says he understood her. The girl says that on the way here she destroyed a bunch of enemies and only one boss remained. The man explains to her that the one she just defeated is called Agitarid. The girl does not believe it and asks again, then suddenly rejoices. Mission is accomplished. Fania asks why she is needed here at all. Pina is amazed she is so happy. The girl from the elven lineage admires her and says she is amazing. Since everything here is already finished, Pepperin suggests meeting with Lala and others. Girls agree. Gobbled on the street says that all this is nonsense and in the end stays with a small fry. He sits on the fallen opponent and says, weak little dogs whine the loudest, but he does not even have the strength for that. He says it is time for him to see how things are inside. In the dungeon itself, Gas asks if that is all and notes with surprise that their friend is nowhere to be seen. The elf girl calls Riz by name hoping she will hear. At the end of the corridor, 4 figures suddenly appear. The elven girl calls Lala. Lala turns around and sees Riz and Pepperin. She is glad that they are fine. Gas notices Pepperin has already found little sister Lucy. The protagonist says that it is a long story and asks if they have finished freeing the servants. Gas blushes with shame. They released everyone and bandaged the wounds, but they have not been fed for a long time, so they are very weak. The protagonist says that this can be fixed and orders to first take everyone outside and then search the local food warehouse. He suggests taking the valuables for themselves. Gnome girl points to herself and says that she knows this place well because she did various jobs here and cleaned. The heroine asks her to accompany everyone in this matter. The girl offers to rely on her. Lala bursts into anger. She approaches the girl and asks how she dares to speak to Mr. Pepperin like that. She says, the fact that they are of the same race means nothing. The girl replies, I will not seduce him. The girl gnome is also angry and shouts that she never even thought about it. The protagonist is confused. The girl gnome shows her new friends the food warehouse. There is a lot of food there. Phanesia is very hungry, but Lala stops her. Pepperin and others feed the prisoners. Everyone is happy and laughing. The protagonist says that he, Ace, and Pachai will take Purse and other leaders to Spaldings. He orders Lala, Iri, and Phanesia to take Riaz and the rest to the village. The subordinates agree. One of the former servants wonders what they should do now. The hero says, from now on they are no longer servants. The girl rejoices in her freedom. He says that among them there are probably those who have nowhere to go and that they can go with Lala. He guarantees their safety. The girl of the gnome race is silent. The girl of the elven race asks her what happened. The girl says that nothing happened and she just doesn't know what to do next. Riss urges her and asks her to go with her, asking if she has anywhere to return to. The gnome replies no. And since she insists so much, Riss is forced to agree. The girl grabs Riss by the hand and pulls her along. Glorious Septum Village. Lucy is wildly worried about the disappearance of her younger sister. A man calms her and says that everything will be fine after all. Mr. Pepperin will definitely save her eventually. One of the boys returns to Nobo and says that someone is approaching the village. Lucy smiles through tears in her eyes and her younger sister runs headlong to her and shouts joyfully. Lucy is glad that she is safe and tells her never to wander outside the village again. The girl hugs her tightly and apologizes for worrying her. Everyone greets her. Phonesia hugs Iri and Panna and says that it is very touching. Nobo wonders where Mr. Pypron and the others are. Lala explains to him he, Gus, and Pachai are delivering the Air Force leaders to Spaldings. The Spalding family fortress. Todd, like a castle on watch, looks surprised. The young commander returned so quickly. Lou asks in amazement who this man is. Pepperin explains. He is one of the leaders of the Black Rot, which has caused so much trouble for the Spalding family. The man exclaims in surprise, "This cannot be." The protagonist replies, "Our hideout is to the northeast from here under the old ruins underground." He also says that they left the rest of the mercenaries in servant cages so that they could later see everything with their own eyes. Lucy still does not believe and orders the soldiers to go there immediately. They agree. The man looks amazed at how this motley crowd managed to cope in such a short time. The protagonist asks if he will reduce the tax to 10. Lo answers affirmatively and says that he promised. Moreover, besides lowering the tax, Pepperin brought him a very valuable gift and now wants to hear what Purst will say about the BBC. He is angry. Pepperin says that then he must go and asks him not to forget about the tax. Lo returns to Mr. Pepperone and extends his hand. He hopes that he will continue to serve the Spalding family. The protagonist agrees and they shake hands. Outside, Gas is happy their Mr. Pepperone has returned. He praises him. Pepperin says that they agreed and can now return. Pochai wonders, weren't they bored leading them here? The main character is embarrassed and exclaims in shock. Gas explains to him, unlike before, their village still belongs to the Spalding family's possessions, and they have benefited from passing on information about problems on their lands. Gas asks Mr. Pepperoni if he is right, and he answers yes. Gobalt says that it is too complicated for him. The protagonist thinks to himself, Gas saved him. If this continues, the Spalding family will begin to trust them more, and they will be able to expand their territory. But it will not be as easy as in the game. State affairs will become more complicated than game mechanics. Gobalt is happy that their ranks of subjects have been replenished by almost 100 people, and Gloria Septim's combat squad will still be reborn. He will train them so well that it will not look like a trifle. Gus throws his hands behind his head and notes that almost all of them are goblins. If they form a squad for secret missions, then he can be useful to them. Pepperin believes that territorial expansion is also important, but first they need to think about military strength. He considers it pointless to expand territory and attract residents if they only have 7 military forces. If they divide them into 2 groups, those who will train the peasants and those who will go in search of books on magic, they will optimize their activities. He plays this out in his head. The protagonist barked but also jumped. Gus and Pookie left and disappeared from sight, and Pepperin fell silent. He calms himself and thinks they will return home and discuss plans for the future. In the village, he first wants to thank everyone for their excellent work because thanks to their efforts they increased the number of items, and Gloria Septim is steadily on the path to simple glory. The protagonist also says that they lack combat power, so they will train novices and must search the ruins for books on magic. Gus suggests, here you can come across books about powerful magic, blueprints, and lots of useful things. Fanasia exclaims happily with enthusiasm. She also really wants to reach the ruins where Steel Dragon was. Nobo notes there are passages sealed with high-level magic and the distance is considerable. Hacha asks where exactly they are heading. Pepperin says they are going to the Borpa Tower. Lala rejoices and is delighted. Their master Pepperin, as always, has great ideas. Yurei asks who will go. The protagonist answers that he, Gus, Fanasia, and Nobo will set out, while Lala, Yurei, and Pachai will stay at the base. Ylfika shouts loudly she is in despair. The girl says she understands. Iri is needed for martial arts training and that Pachai must stay to protect the village, but she does not understand why she also ended up among those who stay. She guessed that she did something wrong when they were on a mission in the Air Force storage. The girl decided that the reason was that she took too long to get to the servants' chambers because she did not know the way. The elf thinks that during that time many innocent lives could have been saved and that it is all her fault. She breaks down in tears and says, "I'm so sorry." The man explains to her that this is not the case at all. He says that in his absence someone must lead the village, and he understands no one is capable of this except Lala. In the maiden's imagination, the main character appears as a handsome man. She exclaims joyfully and blushes. The main character asks if anyone has objections. His subjects respond that there are no objections. Pepperin asks the girl if she will help him. She urges him to rely on her. Nobo says if so, he will tell the guys from the village about the search for the ruins. The protagonist agrees and thanks him. He already has someone specific in mind. The gnome girl is shocked by the search for the ruins. The elf girl is shocked that they were invited. Nobo says they will set out in 3 days, but the wounds have not fully healed yet. It will be dangerous. If they are sure, they should refuse. The gnome girl continues to think about the search in the ruins. With hope in her eyes, she says they will go and calls to rely on them. Nobo agrees and replies that he will convey this. The girl of the gnome race looks dissatisfied, and they ask why she agreed so easily because if something goes wrong, they will die. The girl calms her and says that everything will be fine because Pepperin and the others will be there. But the elf girl says that this is their chance. Pana does not understand what she means. The girl explains to her only Pepperin and Pana will be there, so no possibility can be excluded. The gnome girl blushes, then flies into a rage. She thinks about what exactly that girl imagined and does not understand what possibility was suggested to her. The elf apologizes and says that Mr. Pepperin came to them himself, and that means he expects a lot from them. Lala jumps out of the bushes and says she agrees with the girl because Mr. Pepperin places great hopes on them, and betraying these expectations is the same as betraying Gloria Septim. She says they must not relax because this is a military mission. Riaz and Pana agree with her without arguments. The girl places special emphasis on the dwarf. She does not understand her. The elf girl tells her not to even think about trying to seduce Mr. Pepperin just because they are of the same race. Pana sharply retorts that she did not do anything like that at all. The girl grabs the angry lady by the hand and runs away, stating that under no circumstances can she continue the journey dressed as a servant. She needs to be changed so that she can appear before Mr. Pepperin. He shouts that she can change herself. In 3 days, everyone is ready to set off. The protagonist says he leaves the village in their hands. Lucy shouts at Riz, listen to Mr. Pepperin and do not cause problems for anyone. The girl agrees with her sister, and Pana notes they look more like mother and daughter than sisters. Lala shouts at Pana to remember you cannot do something just because you and Mr. Pepperin are of the same race. The girl shouts fiercely that she already knows everything. Phoenicia laughs. The protagonist is confused. He says they can set off. Everyone is ready for the journey to Borf's Tower. Meanwhile, in Rabali, a city near Borf's Tower, whispers were heard in a bar. One voice asked another if he had heard. In the Elfazaradian Empire, they only talk about the Air Force. They found it and completely destroyed it. One of them said that all the Spalding Knights are like that. The second replied that this is not true, and others claim that the reason is some dwarf. Listening to this conversation, a man tightly gripped his glass. The men said it was not true. Suddenly, a stranger turned to them and asked if they would tell him this story. At this time, Riz and Pana were diligently honing their martial arts. Gas said that everything was going as he expected, and after the whole Air Force story, their courage had not diminished. Phoenicia said with a smile that the risk was still somewhat good-natured. The monsters were defeated, and Pana joyfully said that everything was ready. Pepperin was surprised to hear that the two of them could still do something. Riz thanked him, stepped aside, and said that they would definitely manage. Hyperon thought if problems arise at this stage, then it will definitely not be possible to break through to Bork's Tower. He wondered if they should train a little more on stronger opponents. He smiled and said that their next task was to defeat the man-eating bear that lives in this forest. He assured them that they would wait for him in the forest. Rise was very surprised by these words. He smiled and said that if they united, there was a chance to win. Pana nodded enthusiastically and said that they would do just that. Together, Pana and Rizzy entered the forest. The boys followed them. They were anxious because they did not know if everything would really be fine with just the two of them after all. Mr. Pepperin had given them a truly difficult task. The man said he understood. This was a bit too much, but only this way could they show how high the stakes were in the battle with a powerful enemy. Before reaching the Borf Tower, he wanted them to have a solid foundation. Pepperin went ahead and told Fantasia and Nobo to stay here and invited Gusa to go with him. The boy agreed and they set off together. Nobo said with a smile that while they waited, they could just prepare something to eat. Finikia was very happy with this idea. The boys slowly made their way through the forest, and Riz anxiously insisted that they would definitely manage on their own. Pana Green asked her friend if she was really afraid. Riz awkwardly said that a man who eats a bear sounded like a very bloodthirsty monster, the very one they say, run and don't look back if you meet it. Pana said it was just a bear. With a smile on her face, she asked if Rise had seen how she dealt with those rabbits. The self-satisfied panda said she would just as easily chop up a bear. Suddenly, they heard a threatening growl. They turned around and froze. Behind them stood a huge bear. It stood silently nearby and looked at the girls. Suddenly, it opened its bloodthirsty eyes and in that very moment instilled animal fear in Pan and Wrists. Together, the girls ran away at full speed. Riz asked Pana, reminding her of her earlier words, if she would cut the bear. Pana exclaimed that she couldn't because she wouldn't be able to defeat such a thing. It was gigantic. The girls could also notice that besides its size, this bear was very fast. They turned around and saw that it was approaching. Pana said that at this pace it would simply trample them. The girl pulled out a knife and turned carefully, as if hesitating. The maiden plunged the blade into the monster's belly with all her might. The bear froze for a moment, pressing his hand to his stomach. After that, he suddenly attacked Aganan. Pana was shocked. She couldn't even hit him. The girl was completely focused on her defeat, so she didn't even notice that the monster was about to attack. Rice arrived just in time. The girl told her friend to be careful, then dashed forward and stood between Pan and the monster's direct attack. By the time the bear regained consciousness, he had lost sight of both girls. Then they were hiding behind one of the trees. Reese was breathing heavily. The gentleman stepped aside and said that he actually thought she was about to die. She looked at her friend and was extremely shocked by what she saw. She loudly exclaimed that Reese was wounded. The girl awkwardly smiled and said it was just a scratch and she was fine. Pana turned pale as soon as she realized what had happened. She lowered her head and apologized to her friend. She told how she had previously lost it on that monster Herselfan. This is what happened. Riss encouraged the girl and said that now they needed to try together because maybe she just couldn't handle it alone. She said with enthusiasm that together they would definitely be able to overcome this bear-like cabbage. The young lady was inspired and agreed. At that very moment, the figure of a bear appeared. He noticed the girls in the bushes. They were extremely surprised and only managed to turn around when the bear was already about to slash them both with its sharp claws. And suddenly a small pepperin appeared right in front of him. He quickly stood before the bear and this greatly surprised the monster. Without any hesitation, Pepperin constructed a neat fireball in his hand and redirected it straight at the monster. As the attack flew directly at the bear, it quickly grew in size. The ball hit the upper part of the body and the monster immediately burst into flames. It only managed to try to roar, then fell to the ground, exhausted. When the immobilized monster's body lay on the ground, Pepperin effortlessly jumped on it, then kicked with all his might, pressing the monster into the ground. Reeves froze in shock when he noticed that Pepperin and Gus had already come to them. The man did not turn around but calmly said that, despite everything, it was still too early to set them against such a strong opponent. He also said that both had learned a fairly good lesson. Pana, despite any opponent in front of her, would not lose an ounce of fighting spirit, but sometimes, when having to face the enemy alone, it could endanger her comrade. Reese always puts others first, but the same kindness can turn into weakness and then she will die. With a smile on his face, Pepperin said that when their individual strength is not enough, they can unite. Only when they combine their power will they become stronger. That's why he took both of them with him. Smiling, he said that all the ingredients for dinner had already been gathered, so it was time to return to Nobo together with everyone. At that moment, a group of people was walking through the forest. A young man named Rock Baylist said he was very surprised. He did not expect anyone else to attack the Air Force on Spoden territories. He said he believed that in the Ulf Azarid Empire they would have a chance to become famous. This guy was an adventurer. A mage girl named Manasi Keenborough, walking beside him, agreed and added. Besides, they should go there to see everything for themselves. The knights working for the Air Force prayed, and she said they really needed trouble. Healer Micah Ristar asked if it was true that the leaders of the Air Force would be defeated by dwarves. Guardman Gentry said he understood it was hard to believe, but if Commander Luss said so, it must be true. Rock, squinting and smiling, said he really wanted to see what kind of strong dwarf he really was. Suddenly Manasi called a boy by name and he immediately turned around. At that moment, they were surrounded by a pack of monsters that looked like wolves. Rock smiled and said that these were guard wolves. They guarded the entrance to Bork Tower. He reached for his weapon and began to tease the monsters so that they would rush at him. The wolves, one after another, ran straight at him. At that time, the boys also headed to Borp's Tower. The boys said that the entrance to the tower was guarded by guard wolves. Pepperin said that they could enter only if they first dealt with them. Pana said that she was beginning to lack peace. When they were almost at the entrance, Nobo noticed that someone was already fighting the monsters. Pepperin sighed and said that they had already reached them faster. Rock turned around as soon as he saw the boys. He shouted loudly at them to get out of there. It was very dangerous. At that moment, one of the guard wolves lunged straight at the boys. Without a shadow of hesitation, Pepperin stretched out his hand and unleashed a snowstorm that instantly destroyed all the monsters that attacked them. The frozen monsters quickly scattered. Pepperin asked the strangers if they were travelers, then apologized for interrupting. Rock, in turn, thanked the boy for the help. Suddenly he froze, noticing that Pepperin was a dwarf. He rushed to him very quickly and asked if he was the same dwarf who recently defeated Air Force and the Stain in the domain. Pepperin was confused. He quickly disappeared from sight and awkwardly admitted it was true he was that dwarf. Rock exclaimed with delight that he never thought he would actually meet Pepperin. He added, they also want to go against them. However, they had no information. Pepperin tried to understand why the sky looked so cool because he was not like the others. Rock asked if the boys were country lads, as such a team rarely happens. Pepperin quickly understood. Rock looked like the true main hero of the game. The adventurer introduced himself with a broad smile, then said he was pleased to meet him. He extended his hand to the interlocutor. Suddenly angrily, she ordered that man to stop, then asked if he even knew who he was talking to. She said that this man was the liberator of the 7 races. She raised her hand and exclaimed that this was the greatest ruler of Gloria Septim, the most powerful and bravest hero of this world, Mr. Pepperin. The man awkwardly thought that she spoke just like Lala. When the travelers heard about Gloria Septim, they thought deeply and said they had never even heard of it. Rock asked the guys if they were heading to Borp's tower. He asked if they could go together, then said he would not be a burden to them. Pepperin looked away and thought, of course, this is awkward. But they had already made contact, and if he refused, they would still follow them, so this could seriously ruin this guy's plans. Pepperin said he didn't care, but they weren't flying to the tower for military victories. Their main goal was to find magical books and undergo training. He clarified, if that suited them, they could all go together. With a broad smile, Rock said that it didn't matter to them at all. Mindsy approached him and said he should be more polite. She said they came here only for the guardwolves and didn't intend to go to the tower at all. Rock replied that he knew that but wanted to see with his own eyes the power capable of defeating the Air Force. He barely smiled and said that, moreover, if they were treated now, it would be a disgrace for all A-rank adventurers. Mika confidently and easily replied that they had recently risen to B-rank. Van sighed with a smile and said that if the leader said so, then they had to go. Masani took a deep breath and asked why she wasn't even surprised by this. Rock smiled and exclaimed that it was time for them to move on. Minazi said that they didn't even know where the tower's entrance was. Together, the guys headed to the first floor of Bor's tower. Rock looked around and said what the tower was like inside. Mike noted it was quite gloomy inside. The young lady looked around, then said that it goes without saying it was absolutely empty inside. Riz asked how exactly they could get to the upper floors. Gus smiled, then pointed somewhere and said that it could be used to ascend. Riggs turned around interested. Goblin was pointing at a magic circle on the ground. Reese asked if it was magic. Nobo indicated that it was a teleportation circle, and if they made a mistake in the circle, it could throw them to lower floors and that would cause them problems. Van said he understood, then noted that it was impossible to figure it out immediately. Manasi took a deep breath and replied that the system was far too problematic. Pepperin said that they already knew how to get to the upper floors so they could ascend there without any problems. Panas replied that it was very simple. Pepperin turned around and told the guys not to relax because if they got too close to the circle, there could be problems. At that time, Fanijo was standing on some circle and calling everyone to move faster. Seeing this, Pepperin was speechless. He thought, if they approach the circle, monsters will appear and then they won't be able to use the circle until they defeat them. The guys didn't understand why nothing was happening. They asked if they should also stand in the circle. Everyone stood in one place and wondered if they were standing where they should be. Pepperin noticed everything too late. He asked them to wait a bit, but at that very moment the magic circle activated and bright rays flared up there. After that, they disappeared. Manasi was stunned seeing that the circle had vanished along with the people who were in it. The young lady nervously asked if that meant they would no longer be able to ascend. Suddenly, the girl noticed something near her. She sharply turned around in surprise and saw with horror a monster was standing right behind her. She screamed loudly, wildly frightened. The guys did not understand at all what it was. There was not even time for that. Pepperin did not understand why everything was happening exactly like this. This event also did not match what was in the game. He decided that they probably wouldn't handle this so easily. Rock laughed, then said he didn't fully understand what was going on, but it seemed they would have to fight this monster one way or another. Pepperin said it was similar, but it was time to stop the chatter. He smiled and asked if the travelers would show what they were capable of. Rock gladly agreed. He said that Pepperin would never see him make the same mistake again that he made during the battle with the wolves. Together they rushed into the fight, eager to finish off this monster. At that time, Fantasia and the other boys were on the second floor of the Borfa Tower. They noticed that Mr. Paraparin and the others were late. Nobo wondered if they had been moved to another floor. Goose suggested that if it was true, they probably should go to the upper floor. Ben, who was standing aside, asked if they would go by themselves. He said he does not doubt their strength but fears something will happen to them if they go alone, and he also said their leader Pepperin seems to know more about the tower than anyone else. Moreover, he was worried about Rock, and Manasseh said it was still better for them to stay. Fanasia interrupted him and replied that everything would be fine because they had been through this more than once. She said with a big smile that they just need to move forward. Bono asked if she was so confident because of her strength. Nobo objected that Fanasia simply never thinks ahead. Gas said that if Purpurin were with them, they would also fear neither anyone nor anything. He insisted they still had to go to the upper floor. At that very moment, one of the monsters was already completely defeated. Pepperin asked if the girls could distinguish him from the man-eating bear and the horned rabbits. Riaz immediately agreed. The lady said she could not predict his movements at all. Looking at Rock and Minazi, he thought, while Vanguard fights with all its might, Rearguard provides support with magic. They are a well-coordinated team. He smiled, deciding that this would be a worthy example of pain and risk. Suddenly, Rock shouted loudly, calling the girl's name. Minasi agreed and said she would do it right now. She struck the ground with a magic staff and an icy burn flared up. The monster shuddered, its paws froze. While this was happening, Rock drew his sword and immediately lunged at the monster. With a swift strike, the young traveler cut the spider legs and the creature fell to the ground. Pepperin smiled and said that they did a good job. Rock also smiled and said that it was very good. At that time, Manasi was breathing heavily. The girl stood up and said that it was very difficult for her to cover the rock while Mike was not nearby. At that moment, the miss explained that the teleportation circle had returned. Rice said happily that now they would definitely be able to climb. Pepperin stopped them and said that he still wanted to check something in this place. He said that this time everything looked a little different than the first time. Without Phoenicia and the rest, they would not have been able to get to the upper floor so easily. Minazi exhaled in shock and already guessed what he would say. Pepperin replied that it was exactly so and they would have to conquer the tower themselves. Everyone was struck by these words. He said that of course on the way to the upper floor they would encounter a bunch of strong monsters, and if they were of the same level as the guardian spiders, then he would also be able to cover them all. But still, everyone must protect themselves first. Minazi looked away, deciding that the Watch Knights were perhaps the simplest enemies in the entire tower. He said that they can still exit through the same gate. They could wait until Pepperin conquers that tower and brings others with him. If they enter this circle, they will have to reach the upper floor. There will be no way back. If they are not confident in their abilities, it is better for them to stay. Suddenly, someone interrupted Pepperin. Rock proudly declared that he would not become a burden. He added that he was also a traveler who had entered the dungeon, and assured that he would never stoop to running around with his tail between his legs. Pepperin felt awkward. The man thought about how Rock again imagines himself the main hero, and this made him even more uncomfortable. Minasi asked if that was not enough since they had only passed one floor and that should be enough. She said that it was better for them to just wait there because hoping to conquer the Borp Tower by their own strength was too confident. And she also said that, to be honest, only she, Rock, and Pipron should fight. Hearing such speeches, Riz's face noticeably darkened. She angrily declared that she and Panna did not come for beauty. Minasi grimaced with a visible smile and asked if that was true. She took a deep breath and said that she admitted the little girl was doing quite well. After that, she pointed out several very bad moves on Reese's Bart. This only made the girl even angrier. She shouted that they were also going because, unlike some, they were not afraid to climb the Borf Tower. Minazi said that she did not understand how they could beat the Air Force with such a team if elves and dwarves, of course, should be sitting at home. Rice shouted so that Minazi could not insult Mr. Pepperoni and Panna. At that time, Rock bowed low and apologized, saying that Minazi was really a good person, but if angered, she would be extremely evil. Watching this, Pepperin simply sighed deeply and said that everything was fine. He also added that if they wanted to change their minds, now was a very good moment, because if they made even one mistake, it would be the end for them. Everyone was silent, but it was clear each was thinking over Pepperin's words. Later, they all stood on the magic circle, and after that, they began to be transported to another place. This feeling was not ordinary. They looked around, and then Riz asked if this was the second floor. Panna replied that it was almost no different from the first here. Minazi looked at Pepperin and asked where the next teleportation circle was located. At that moment, the boy was somewhat surprised by what he managed to see there. Rock asked if there was a teleportation circle on this floor. Pepperin replied that there was none and that it was simply impossible, so they had to thoroughly search the entire room. Starting from the second floor, teleportation circles stand in the direction of the 4 cardinal points. To move forward, you must choose one of them. Pepperin was quite scared because if there was no circle, they would neither be able to climb up nor return down. Minas leaned against the wall and took a deep breath, repeating what she had already said before. They just needed to stay downstairs. She said that they had already completely searched the room, but there was nothing there. She said it was just a waste of time when suddenly something caught her attention. She turned sharply and her face instantly went pale. Right in front of her stood a huge monster, several times bigger than the girl herself. She immediately rushed back and asked what it was. Rizzy heard with surprise that the thing was moving. Pepperin quickly understood it was a guard. He said that the circle will most likely appear after they defeat the monsters. The principle is a bit different, but they will still have to overcome these creatures. Pepperin ordered Pain and Rizzy to stay behind and under no circumstances attack, and explained to Roku and Minazi that they would have to work hard again. Anna, Riss, and Rock accepted the order, while Minazi looked quite tense because of everything that was happening. Altogether, they were ready to enter a brutal battle. The first to charge at the enemy was Pepperin. He lunged forward with a sharp thrust, then drew his weapon and struck the monster on its iron head. The blow echoed with an extremely loud sound throughout the room. The maiden noticed that the monster had an iron body, and Rise replied, "Mr. Pepperin simply cannot cut it with his sword." The boy looked at the sword and thought, as expected, this monster cannot be defeated by strength alone. Pepperin rushed into battle again, but this time he wanted to try a new trick. Then the monster pulled out 2 huge swords from behind its back, swung them in front of itself, and tried to hit Pepperin. In the room, a tall cloud of dust rose, slowly settled, and then the monster noticed a thing it did not expect to see at all. He looked shocked when it happened. Little Pepperin barely smiled. His weapon effortlessly deflected the monster's attack. Pepperin swung his weapon and the enemy swords parted under the blow. With slow, precise movements, he gathered magical power in his palm. Just after this, he raised his hand and scattered a huge portion of magical flame over the monster. The monster instantly heated up. He was very surprised by such a trick. He waved his hand. The flames spread to the sides. He looked at Pepperin, who slyly smiled in response. The young lady covered her face with her hand, avoiding the flame. She only convulsively exhaled with delight. For her, the power of Pepper was truly impressive. After this, Pepperin jumped off the ground and rushed to attack the monster again. As soon as he was above the enemy, he struck it again with his flame. He continued to use the strong flame of magic, occasionally changing position. This lasted quite a long time. Rice asked why he only uses flame, since it was clear it had no effect on him. Pina exclaimed that this was not true. She pointed to her friend at the iron body of the monster. It was already beginning to melt due to the large amount of fire magic. She was very surprised when she noticed it. Pepperin barely smiled, thinking that in such a state the monster was perfect for him. He swung the sword again, not taking his eyes off the monster. With all his might, Pepperin struck the monster with his sword, and after that the already weak enemy's body was cut into 2 parts. The boy looked at the fallen monster and quietly exhaled. He remembered how he used the flame 5 times on one guard. He looked away, thinking that earlier he wanted to conserve his strength as much as possible until the maximum height of the floor. Without Fantasia and others nearby, he simply couldn't swing the sword so freely. But Pepperin could not deny this improvised performance was quite successful, so perhaps he should come up with a name for this attack. While he was deep in thought, Panna looked at the boy with admiration. She thought about the fact that she could not deny Pepperin is incredibly cool and that he is fundamentally different from other gnomes. She caught herself again and again thinking that someday she really wants to be as strong as he is. She blushed a little and thought about what the future with him might be like. Suddenly, a fantasy surfaced in her mind. Pepperin kneels before her and asks her to fight alongside him. There she would gladly accept his proposal, and together they would fight all their lives. She quickly waved her hand, trying to chase away this creation of imagination, and wondered what exactly those terrible feelings were. Hannah convinced herself that she simply felt very sorry for Pepperin and therefore wanted to become stronger to help him at least a little, and nothing more. Suddenly, someone called her by name. Hannah woke up and asked shyly what had happened. Reyes looked at her friend and asked worriedly what had happened, then pointed out that Panna was as red as a tomato. The girl was embarrassed and whispered that everything was fine. She was just thinking about how cool Pepperin was. Riz said that it was true. Suddenly, Panna noticed mixed feelings reflected on her friend's face. Riz awkwardly smiled and added that she was so scared she couldn't move. She could only think about how bitter it was that she was unable to be of any use to Pepperin. She repeated that it was just like that girl Manasi said, Riz was not fit for battle. Panna objected and said that was completely untrue. Suddenly, Pepperin approached her and said that it was not true at all. The girl turned around in surprise, and the boy explained, in battles not only attackers are important but also defenders. This time he ordered both of them to hold the rearguard, and only because they obeyed him was he able to fully concentrate on the attacks. That guy said that Rock and Minazi are truly strong. Being only two on their team, they can orient themselves and act according to the situation. He said it would be great if they emphasized something from the beat, but they don't need to compare themselves to the masters. The girls were inspired by Pepperin's words. The boy finally managed to breathe a sigh of relief. He thought about how hard it was to say something like that every time and how much easier it would be if he had a collection of the king's phrases or something like that. After that, Pepperin shifted his gaze to the other side and wondered what would happen if he simply trusted Manasi and Roku to take down that guard. At that moment, the monster launched a rather serious attack and Rock was thrown against the wall and hit it with a dull thud. He looked up and froze. The force of a single blow was colossal. Manasi anxiously asked the boy if he was okay. He replied that everything was fine. Then Manasi suggested he use the same tactics as during the experience with the spider and said she could stop him. Rock slyly smiled and said he trusted her with it, and as soon as Manasa gathered magical power into her staff, he immediately rushed forward. At some point she screamed loudly, saying the stone must fly off right now. He caught up with Manasa's words. The boy pushed off the ground and found himself high in the air. The monster raised its neck upwards in surprise as a powerful flash of light burst into the sky. Manasi struck the ground with her staff with all her might, creating a wide path of icy magic. The monster managed to regain consciousness, thanks to which it grabbed its swords and repelled Minedzi's attack. Rock was very shocked. He did not immediately realize what had happened. The girl, loudly and no less stunned, reported that the monster had repelled her attack. On the tips of the monster's swords lay a thick layer of magical ice. He easily broke it and pulled out his weapon. Then he stood up and struck with the weapon to attack Rakaha, was hanging in a too dangerous position. He crossed his arms, intercepting the blow that was supposed to hit in a few seconds, and he rushed through the air as fast as possible. Manasi only managed to shout the boy's name and all her concern, but there was no way to help. As soon as the monster lunged at Rock, Pepperin began to approach them. He soared with incredible speed and the spell flashed brightly in his hand. He carefully and quite gracefully waved the sword, applying a flame strike. This attack instantly passed through the monster's metal body. Pepperin's sword was so hot that in a moment it melted the monster's body and it quickly fell to the ground. This time Rocket looked at Pepperin with a sincere, admiring smile on his face. When he landed, the boy glanced over his shoulder out of the corner of his eye and saw that the monster was already defeated. He proudly looked at the blade and noted, if he had immediately wrapped the sword in flames, he wouldn't have wasted so much energy. Manasi froze and looked at what was left of the monster, impressed. She said it melted from just one blow. Rock exclaimed that everything was as expected. All the guys burst into the fight together, but immediately noticed this time something was definitely wrong. Pepperin nervously asked what was happening. The others also looked stunned. Suddenly everything around them became dark. They asked what had just happened. The boys couldn't see each other, it was too dark. Panna asked if this meant they had already been transferred to another floor. Suddenly the girl felt something with her palm. She turned and asked what it was. Suddenly her face became very pale from what she saw in front of her. Right before them stood a dragon of incredible size. The monster silently stared at them with its cruel eyes. Rock's face turned pale as he said that the size of this monster was simply astonishing. Pepperin was extremely impressed. Before them stood the second keeper, the one called Dragon. Pepperin could not understand anything. Dragon was the keeper of the 5th floor. At the same time, in the House of Monsters, on the 8th floor of the Borfa Tower, Fantasia and others dealt with a large number of monsters without much difficulty. The girl smiled broadly, then exclaimed that they had finally cleared this floor. The truly impressed group noted that she managed to defeat so many monsters on her own. Equally impressed, Mika said that it turns out there are such cool harpies like Venetia. At that moment, Gas caught their attention. He loudly shouted that there was a chest nearby. Nobo smiled and told the guys to take as much as they could carry. Nobo turned around and smiled, asking Mr. Bana if he would help them. Mike stepped aside while Bana somewhat awkwardly gasped from surprise, then agreed. While the guys gathered various things, Fantasia leaned on the chest lid and with a smile said that probably Mr. Pepperin and all the others were also having fun somewhere. At that very moment, Pepperin and everyone else were on the 5th floor tense as a string. Right before them, a terrifying two-headed dragon. Manasi exclaimed that she had only seen such in pictures and books. Rock looked at the monster and tremblingly asked if they could really win. He said that 3 of them were still capable of doing something. After that, he ordered Wrists and Pain to retreat. Rice loudly exclaimed that they could fight too, but Pepperin quickly refused her and said that this monster was clearly not like the ones before. The 3 of them could defeat it, and Nobo's magic would cover them. The man said that they could not cast spells, and even in the rear it would be extremely dangerous for them. The monster could deliver a fatal blow with one strike. Pana turned pale as soon as she heard about the possibility of receiving such a wound. Hyperon looked at Minazi and asked her name. After that, he said he wanted to assign her to protect Riss and Pina and also as cover for them. Minazi came to her senses and quickly agreed. The girl waved her hands smugly and declared that since she was covering them, they could relax after all. It was just a weak elf and a gnome. She elegantly raised her staff, then sharply and quickly struck it against the ground. As soon as this happened, a fairly reliable protective field immediately appeared around them. Pana and Riss looked visibly surprised. Manasi stepped forward a little and told the girls that it was safe inside this protective field, so they needed to sit quietly. Pano looked at the edges of the protective field with admiration and whispered how incredible it was. Riss was clearly dissatisfied but did not say a word. Pepperin stepped forward and gave a brief command, "Start the fight." Rock and Mancy looked tense but were still ready to fight. At that moment, as if following Pepperin's order, 2 dragons rushed into battle against the boys. Pepperin and Rock immediately charged forward while Minazi held her staff, maintaining defense. Pana watched the fight under the shield with the sincerest admiration and talking about how cool it was to be a mage said, "Manasi really has impressive abilities." Reyes was a little surprised by these words and asked if it was true. Pana asked if it was impossible to do absolutely anything with magic. She did not know how to create magic at all but dreamed of learning to use fire, water, or explosions. Because of this, she decided to become a little more useful to Mr. Pepperin. Listening to this, Riz became awkwardly silent. She looked at Manasi, who was now straining with all her might to hold the protective field and cover the boys. While she recalled Manasi's mockery that the girl was clumsy, her emotions boiled and burst out. And all those talks about how they both were incapable of casting spells, so they were completely useless for the fight. She still remembered the words that they were ordinary because they lacked the ability to cast spells and that they could do nothing for Pepperin. And finally, his words about how they should sit quietly inside and not get in the way. She was pissed off that they always had to protect someone. Riz's emotions overflowed and she began to shake with rage. The next moment she rushed forward while Pana tried to stop her, confused by her friend's actions. Riz jumped out of the protective field and immediately rushed onto the battlefield, where now the most elite warriors fought side by side with Pepperin. Rock was the first to notice this. He was quite surprised by the girl's actions. Seeing Riz, Pepperin loudly called her name and ordered her not to come closer. Mancy was also confused. Edge could not understand why this girl had stepped out of the protective circle. The dragon could not fail to notice this either. The little elf was walking straight towards him and the monster sharply shifted its gaze, trying to kill Riss. The girl was completely astonished. The young lady screamed loudly, trying to warn her friend about the danger. Riz spread her arms in front of her, then quickly closed her eyes. She was afraid of what might happen. In the next moment, she unleashed light magic. The young lady covered her face with her palms, shocked that her friend could use magic at all. Minasa noticed that the dragon stopped. She shouted, "The monster stopped, and this is the perfect moment to attack." The boys did not waste a second. As soon as they got up from the ground, they found themselves right above the monster's head. They raised their weapons to deliver the final blow. Rock screamed loudly and Pepperin silently spun around to slash with all his might. At that moment, they both struck so hard that they hit both heads of the monster and pierced them through. At that moment, both heads of the monster fell to the ground, and the boys were able to breathe a sigh of relief. The dragon was defeated. Riss looked surprised at what she had done herself. Pawner immediately ran to her friend. She looked extremely worried. Rice turned around and apologized to Pana, but the girl stopped her and said that she jumped up so suddenly it surprised her a lot. But still, Pina said it was simply incredible because Ruse managed to use magic. At that moment, Manasa clearly angry hurried towards the girls with quick and rather sharp steps. She walked straight up to Reese and gave her a hard look. With a careful movement, she pushed Panu aside and she looked very surprised. With an expression of displeasure, Riz asked what had happened. The next moment, Manasi slapped the girl on the cheek. Then she shouted loudly, asking who this stupid elf was. She asked if she hadn't told her earlier to stay inside the protective field. Manasi asked what Riz was thinking when she decided to jump out onto the battlefield. Riz immediately pressed her palm to the spot where Manasi had hit. She tightly pressed her lips and tears welled up in her eyes. She couldn't say a word. Pana tried to stop Manasi and tell her not to speak like that, but suddenly Pepperin called her by name and stopped her. The boy coldly ordered her not to interfere. Rock watched awkwardly, and Paninal, looking downcast, said she just wanted to meet Mr. Pepperin's expectations. She lowered her head and said that they simply cannot be allowed to protect forever. Manasi sighed and slipped away while Riz whispered that she just wants to be as useful as she is. Manasi asked the girl to listen to her. After that, she said that the leader Rios didn't even warn her, basically don't cling because she's just annoying, and added, if the girl were annoying, she would have been left waiting on the first floor. Manasi sharply struck the staff on the ground, then sternly said that Pepperin took her with him because he decided she could become something, and if she wants to somehow respond to his feelings, she must not try to die in vain. Riz looked at Manasi with admiration. Her words really had a strong impact. She bowed low and apologized to Manasi for what she had done. The girl lowered her staff and said she had gone too far on her own. Mansi apologized and said she shouldn't have said everything she blurted out earlier in a fit of anger. However, she said that if Manasi wants to cover them in battle, she needs to stay away from the enemy. Rock laughed as the tension eased a bit, and the rest of the boys finally managed to smile. Manasi exclaimed about the importance of constantly assessing the situation in battle and providing the necessary help. She added that light is not for close combat. Riz quickly said that she just understood. She awkwardly laughed and said that all she could do was despair, so everything happened quite by accident. She also added that she herself didn't have time to understand anything. Manasi said that it could have been a coincidence, but from now on, if she trains, she will be able to use even stronger magic than this. She said that the magic of the wrists has even more talent than hers. A little elf heard this and asked what these words meant. Manasi sat down and said that everything was difficult for her except ice magic. If their healer Mickey had not been there, she could only manage a small number of spells. She smiled and said that she was not as all-powerful a sorceress as they might think. Suddenly, Rock said from behind that if it were not for this staff, she would not have been able to cast spells at all. Minanasi shouted that this was not true because the staff only helped her save mana. At that moment, Pepperin addressed Reese. He slowly approached and the girl immediately felt a sense of guilt. She knelt down and lowered her head, trying to apologize. She was so nervous that she could not even find the right words. Pepperin said that the light was incredible and that this was her first fight where she was able to defeat a two-headed dragon, so it was worth a lot. He smiled broadly and said that he looked forward to her help in the future. Rise was very happy. She looked at Pepperin, then immediately agreed with his words. Suddenly, Panna waved her hand and said that a passage appeared to the floor. Riza immediately ran joyfully to her friend, and Pepperin wondered which floor he would throw them to next time. He wanted to reach Monster House 4 to train 2 on small monsters, but there were only mid-level bosses here, so they could not gain any real combat experience. If they reached the upper floor and still meet Venetia and the others, they might even be killed. At the very thought of this, Pepperin's face turned pale. Rock turned and looked at Pepperin while everyone else was already standing on the magic circle. Rock asked the boy what happened and if he would go with them. Pepperin tried to come to his senses, then said he was going. He became nervous. He thought that for this he relied on the guys. And at the same time, in the Borf Tower on the upper floor, right near the entrance to the gate of the upper floor, Fantasia and the others were already there. A satisfied girl lay down on the defeated monster and joyfully exclaimed that it was all over and now only the final boss remained. At that moment, Fantasia was extraordinarily calm. Ban, pale with shock, said that she was capable of defeating absolutely all the bosses on her own, and the rest of the guys sat in one place and ate until Nobo said that this happens every time. Suddenly, Fantasia noticed that some figures were appearing in the air. She happily stood up and sharply inhaled. A moment later, Mr. Pepperin was already standing before the guys, and next to him appeared Wrists, Panna, Rock, and Menassi, whom Farsia was shouting about accordingly. Pepperin went further and happily sighed, feeling relief. He said that fortunately they were all right. Nobo said that he had already started to worry, but it was good that they met again. Fantasia rushed to Pepperin and said that he had to look at how many treasures they had collected. Pepperin looked at her, then praised the girl for her achievements. Ben said that the guys looked completely beaten. Rock replied that it was all right, they had just been fighting a dragon. After that, he asked Mike to take care of everyone. The healer quickly agreed. Mike raised his staff and indifferently said that they could start. He closed his eyes, then called blue healing. Everything around them lit up. In a moment, everyone was fully healed. Panna and Reese rejoiced. Even the smallest scratch on the body had already disappeared and healed, while Manasi and Rock were just pleasantly healing. Rock couldn't resist and commented on how nice it was to feel strong again. Pepperin noted that thanks to Mike's amazing magic, their strength had returned again. The healer bowed low and said he was glad to help. Goose decided to inquire and in the Bro Tower asked Nobo who was in charge here. Nobo calmly replied that their enemy was the god of guardians. This monster is a golem of the highest level and it is also incredibly large. The problem is that it is an extremely cunning opponent. It has 4 arms, each with different weapons, and it also uses a whole range of spells. Rock clenched his fists and nervously said that they had finally reached the final boss. He encouraged the others, only then would they be able to enter the battle. Paperin noted that they simply cannot defeat the guardian god by his strength alone, so everyone needs to unite and completely crush him. After that, Pepperin said that they could go to God. Everyone lined up at the entrance to the final boss. They were awaiting a battle against the god of guardians. All the guys, of course, were nervous. The guys were climbing a rather long staircase to where the final boss awaited them. Somewhere halfway, the stairs ended abruptly, and they all saw a large door from which bright light was bursting out. As soon as the guys entered the room, they saw a large, dark sphere illuminating the space. It looked eerie, positioned right in the very center of the room. Panna asked what it was, as she had never seen such a huge red sphere before. Riss asked if it was the guardian god. Suddenly, the door behind them closed, cutting off their way out. Paperin tensed up strongly, then said he was going. Suddenly, the huge sphere shone even brighter and a creature appeared in the center of the room. In one hand he held a huge spiked ball, in the other a sledgehammer and a sword. A huge creature appeared in the center of his body, and in the middle of it the red sphere emerged before the guys. Ban was genuinely surprised by the incredible size of their enemy. Rock, no less impressed, said that compared to him, dragons were just trifles. Riss turned pale and asked how anyone could even fight such a monster. Pepperin said that the main weakness of the Guardians was the flame from the Scarlet Sphere, which had a magical effect. He told Gus to go left and Fantasia right to distract the monster from the main forces. Phanesia raised her swords above her head, then joyfully exclaimed that she finally got herself a challenging opponent. Gas also stepped forward and, sighing, told the girl not to be so happy. Pepperin turned into stone and said that they would destroy his weak spot, the sphere. He asked if Rock could use fire magic. He turned around and replied that he could apply fire. Nobo smiled mockingly, then relaxed the muscles in his arms and said that the guys could easily leave them rear guard protection. Ben asked Mikey, a little worried, if he could cover the entire field with a protective barrier and heal them. The healer took a deep breath, then said that he had just spent too much mana, so doing everything at once would be very difficult. Minazi turned around and said she would put up a shield so it would take some time for him to recover. Then she ordered Rizzy and Payne to stick together and this time did not allow them to jump onto the field. The girls quickly agreed. Pepperin waved his hand and said that then they needed to start the fight. At that moment, on the boss's order, Fantasia and Gus burst into battle. The guy turned around easily and thanks to this hit the monster with a rather good wound. After that, he skillfully put one foot on the floor, rose even higher, and multiplying himself with several copies, rushed to attack the monster. It could not figure out what exactly was happening around it. Each variation of Gus seductively blinded, while he himself simultaneously showered the monster with a series of quick and agile strikes. The next moment the monster swung one of its 4 arms and a large ball of needles intercepted Gus's strike. After that, the guy immediately rushed back and stood on the chain that connected the monster's weapon. Gus quickly ran along it, heading straight for the monster, acting instantly and extremely skillfully. Without making any unnecessary movement, he cut the chain he was running on and left the monster without one of its weapons. Then he glanced back and called out to Phanesia, saying that her time had come. The girl smiled and said she understood. She raised her blades and rushed forward, swung hard, then delivered 1,000 blows to the enemy. The monster grabbed everything in its metal body because there was no other way out in this situation. After that, Phanesia smiled and called Mr. Pepperin, saying that this was the perfect moment for his attack. Pepperin, on his part, passed the order to Roku and Nobo. They looked clearly concerned. Nobo gathered his palms in one place and began to accumulate a large ball of flame. The boys did not lag behind either, they did the same. They gathered a fairly large cluster of flames, so the room quickly became unbearably hot. In the next moment, they all directed this powerful strike straight into the red core of the enemy. Panna and Rizzy, who were watching the battle from the side, shouted. Everything worked and the fight was almost over. Suddenly, as if noticing the children's joy, the monster stood up and looked at them. Soon large attacking claws appeared around his broken body. The children were amazed when they saw them. Nobo immediately intercepted them and pulled them to himself so that this strike would not injure them too badly. Phoenicia hit herself hard and flew into the wall. She took a loud breath. Gus got up, holding his head with one hand. He said they had let their guard down. Phoenicia quickly grew from the ground and shouted loudly that she was angry. At full speed, she rushed at the monster, trying to hit him, unleashing a wave of rage. The enemy easily swiped his claw, and after that Phoenicia quickly flew away, letting out a loud scream. She flew straight into the protective field where Pina and Riss were. Each of her falls raised a large cloud of dust in which the girls tried to find her. Russ immediately rushed to help her and called her name, and Panna approached anxiously and asked the harpy if she was okay. Mr. Pepperin said nervously to the others that they must not relax under any circumstances because the enemy was attacking them again. At that moment, the monster created bright magical spheres behind his back from which a fairly fast and strong strike shot out. At the moment of the attack, his claws were aimed directly at the boys. In a moment, this strike caught and bound everyone on the battlefield without exception, leaving them in an extremely vulnerable position. The boys did not know what to do, and Pepperin turned pale. Suddenly, the monster raised his claws up, and magical energy began to flow from the top of his metal body. Seeing this, Nobo immediately understood. Things were very bad for them. Minazi turned pale and said that even her shield would not withstand this. Gas awkwardly smiled, not taking his eyes off the mesmerizing attack, then asked the others if this was the end for them. In the next moment, the magical power that the monster was gathering became several times stronger. Pepperin trembled with nerves. He thought that everything would become much easier if only they managed to disperse it. Suddenly, someone shouted to the guys to retreat. Struck by these words, they looked back and saw that a man in armor was heading towards them. Ban stood before them, smiling rather sternly, and sweat was streaming down his face. The guys were very surprised when he entered the battlefield. Someone among them said that everything had been going extremely smoothly so far. He spread his arms wide and thought that now he was acting as a protector and had to fulfill his duty at any cost. The magical attack that the monster was about to launch landed right in Ban's hands, and he was quite surprised at how heavy it was. His leg began to shake, and it became difficult for him to stay on the ground. He asked what kind of magic it was. Veins began to bulge on his face from how much he was putting into it. He said that if it continued like this, it would simply crush him. Suddenly, he noticed something that truly surprised him. Minazi, Riss, and Panna gathered behind him, holding Ban with all their strength and trying to help him. The struck man asked what they were doing. Manasi shouted that if he died, it would be the end for everyone. Riss said that they might not be that strong, but if they were going to die, it would be all together. Ban felt that as soon as they tried to help, the power returned to him again. He was silent for a while, then said that they owed him a great debt. He squeezed all the power out of himself, then, spreading his whole body, pushed the magical ball away from himself straight at the monster. The ribbons screamed loudly, demanding everything from him without reserve so that he could do what he intended. Finally, he managed to push the attack away from himself and release it directly at the opponent. At that moment, Riss, Panna, and Manasi were thrown back. The wave of magic was simply incredible. The monster tried to stop the attack with its claws, but they quickly cracked. He was shocked when his own magic appeared right before his eyes, and then he was even more surprised the magic exploded right in front of his face. The next moment, the magic holding the boys shattered. Pepper smiled widely and exclaimed that they were finally free. Ben fell to his knees and broke into heavy breathing, saying that he had finally succeeded. Minazi stood very close to him and also swallowed air until hoarseafter that she said she even thought she would die here. Riss collapsed to the floor and declared that they were incredibly lucky. Hina fell and said she no longer believed in it. At that moment, Mika stepped forward. Clutching his staff, he said he had recovered and could now heal them. Bone replied that they could wait a little and that first they needed to heal Rock and the king. Mike raised his spear and said he surrenders, carefully struck with the weapon using beauty healing. At that moment, the guys felt much better. Nobo awkwardly smiled and said that everyone was saved thanks to Mr. Ben. The man replied, "No, that's not true. After all, everyone helped. And besides, he was going to kill the god of guardians anyway." Nobo smiled and said that they all accomplished a true feat attacking the guardian god so easily. He also added, "Let Rock and Pepperin deliver the final blow." The boys cured by the red medicine smiled and looked at the other boys. Pepperin smiled and asked Rock if it was worth finishing. The boy also smiled and agreed with a broad smile. In a moment, they jumped out of the ground and rushed at the enemy. Within a second, they found themselves right in the heart of the monster. Exchanging a brief glance, they drew their weapons and struck the red core with all their might. At that very moment, the monster's heart shattered. At that moment in the fortress, the village of Gloria Septim, a considerable commotion arose. Someone shouted that everything was ready. After that, a voice announced, Mr. Pepperin had long wanted to open public baths. With a broad smile, Lala said that the private baths where Mr. Pepperin can relax are also ready. Yuri thought, it is here, on the contrary, that proper relaxation will not be possible. The girl stepped forward and declared with a broad smile that she would go to the shower. She hadn't entered the bathroom for a long time. Lala sharply looked at her and immediately kicked Yuri, exclaiming that she couldn't do that. She said that this is the private Pepperin bathhouse, and if Eri wants, she can go to the bathhouse that is for everyone. Eri exclaimed that she already knew that because it never even occurred to her to visit the Pepperin bathhouse. Lala smiled widely, then said that Mr. Pepperin was probably very tired after such a long walk, and when he returns, she will give him a good back massage. The girl could not stop thinking about Mr. Pepperin, who at that moment was in Morse Tower. At that very second, the tower was blown up. The boys covered their heads so that neither debris nor dust would get into their eyes. The boys froze in anticipation as the god of guardians slowly cracked, and bright rays of light pierced through every crack. The boys looked up when suddenly they noticed some parts of the monster began to disappear. Gas smiled and noted that the monster was vanishing. Ban smiled and said that it meant the guardian god was crushed. Manasi, Rise, and Pana held hands and happily spun in a circle dance. Manasi joyfully said that, as expected from the king, he was the strongest among the dwarves. With a smirk on his face, Riz added that Lee Rock is actually cool. Pana said that they are all incredible in this situation. Nobo punched with Ban's fist and they, smiling, said they did it. Ban agreed with a smile on his face. Gas approached Fantasia and told the girl that it was all over. She raised her head and asked if it was time to eat. Mika froze in surprise, hearing how deeply the girl had fallen asleep. Suddenly, someone was called to the Kingan. Pepperin immediately turned around. Rock smiled broadly and thanked the little one for being with them all this time, because it was thanks to him that Rock and all their comrades felt stronger. Pepperin said that he had no intention whatsoever of taking them with him, the masters. Rock was surprised. The man replied that they went to Borfstower of their own free will. Although he warned them before the second floor, if you are not sure, turn back, they did not turn back and fought to the end. He said that they got there by their own efforts and he just went with them. Rock was surprised by such words. Pepperin added that he should thank them. He said that the meeting with the masters made both of them grow the same, especially Russ, who was taught by Manasi, and that their meeting was the greatest achievement for Russ in this tower. Gus called Pepperin and said that nearby there is a chest of the god guardian. He was beaming. He warned them that it was dangerous there, so they needed to take out the contents of the chest and divide it outside. Suddenly, Gus asked where the treasures they got earlier had gone. Nobo said they left them in the previous room. All the guys happily went to the treasures. In Rabaul, a city near Borf's tower, there was a terrible noise. People asked what the explosion in the tower was. They said that some traveler had already been there. They asked if it was true that everyone said so, as if it was impossible. Others claimed that it could not be on the top floor of this tower. Here lives a bear killer over 30 meters tall, and he hides a chest with countless treasures. Gold and silver. Adventurers and thieves who believed these tales entered the tower, but no one came out alive. People said they met a dragon. They decided it was human screams that scared it. The guys had already pulled all the treasures out of the tower. Argis asked if they would return through the portal. The lady wondered if they would end up somewhere strange and if they would meet a dragon. Pepperin said that this is the top floor and they will not get to any other, only outside. He believed that wherever they went, they would need a portal. Nobo said that everything would be as before. Phynesia replied that it was time to return. Rock agreed and they teleported. The guys really trained well at Gloria Septim training ground. Pache said that with such endurance they cannot serve in any special assault unit. He ordered them to do 500 push-ups. Eri said that his conditions are Spartan. Pogi replied that he is trying to raise real warriors from them because Pepperin personally trains Riaz and Pango. He was going to raise those who do not lose. He asked if she wanted to take a bath. Aaron hesitated for a moment and he realized that she was practicing a back massage. Aaron asked if it was necessary at all. Lala confirmed this and said yes so that she could perfectly help Pepperin. She raised Ari's hands and was already about to wash her. Ari asked to stop, but it was not her back at all. She replied that she could not resist and left. Pache looked around sympathetically when suddenly Lala's voice sounded. Ari immediately disappeared. The man laughed, imagining how Nobo and others are having fun with Pepperin. The guy jumped sharply. They were outside and everyone was happy. Manasi even missed the whole world. Pepperin said that before parting, they have to divide the treasure. The girls were glowing while Rock examined the sword. Pepperin said that this is the Rage Sword. There is no other like it in the whole world, a rare thing. This is proof of victory over the guardian god. Pepperin ordered Rock to hold it. The guy thanked him. After they sorted out the treasures, they were already heading to the village. Rock was surprised and asked if they would rest in Rabaul. Pepperin replied that they created the village and need to return quickly. He also said that he does not want to be seen and that Rock will help a lot if he does not talk about them. The man agreed. Banasia hugged Mike and said that later in the village they will have fun. Bon said goodbye to Nobo and the girls went to Minazi. The girl turned away and asked them to be careful. She said that she does not like goodbyes and it would be great if they meet again someday. They interrupted her and thanked her for everything. They said they would try to become stronger in magic before they met again. Minace could no longer hold back and screamed in tears. She hugged them and cried loudly. Rock said that they too would become stronger and then set off on a new adventure. Then they would become even stronger. Pepperin asked the boy to call him by his name. They became comrades and were very happy about it. Rock smiled and said they would meet again. Pepperin agreed and after that they parted ways. The boys said they hadn't seen such a strong gnome for a long time and there was so much in the world they didn't know. Mike noticed that they hadn't seen gnomes for a long time and they were not a rare people at all. Suddenly someone called the boys. The residents asked if they had captured the tower and if it was their doing. Rock wanted to explain everything but remembered Pepperin's request for confidentiality. Suddenly people noticed the sword and said it was from the tower. They didn't let Rock say a word. They wanted to tell everything in the city because those who captured the tower had already appeared. Rock denied everything. Riz sighed and Panna asked what had happened. The girl said they went together with everyone but she didn't think she was useful. Panna thought that Rise could do magic but she didn't help at all. Panna didn't know if she could become just as strong, otherwise she would simply be left behind. Suddenly Riz shouted that as soon as they returned to the Villagethi would train. They would not lose to Manasi and would do everything to support each other. Panna smiled and agreed. She said she would not hold back and wanted this. At that time someone was watching Pepperin closely. The girl declared that she had found the gnome about whom rumors were circulating. Gus set off to the nearest town to gather various information from the village, while Ari began conducting different experiments using a book she managed to find in Borf's tower. Besides conducting experiments, Erichi also took on training a sage. Nobo was responsible for expanding various structures in the village. Pachai was then occupied with something else. The man shouted loudly that it was over and told the others they could rest for 5 minutes and then they would run 50 kilometers around the village. The students nodded in unison. The goblin girl Coco leaned her hands on her knees and was heavily panting, glad that they were finally given a break. Koboltachi wiped sweat from his face with one hand, gasped for air, and then said that she was really on the edge and that it was a pitiful sight. Harpiatori leaned on her belt and said that even Hatch was barely breathing. Titan Dag turned pale and fell to his knees, saying that this definitely did not suit him, because he would rather engage in some research. Hatchai hit Dag hard, then declared that his body, on the contrary, needed to be adapted to any battle even better than Daraz's, because he should not just read books. Dag covered his face and his side started to hurt. Little Mr. Pepperin approached Pachai and asked how he was feeling. Pachai was glad to see his friend. He looked at the students and said that he was trying to keep them in formation because they were quite strong guys. He said that soon it would be possible to go hunting. Pepperin replied that he was pleased by that. Suddenly Pachai said that everyone had different backstories. Because of this, minor quarrels arise, so he wants them to become friendlier and act as one team. Pepperin agreed, then added that he had an idea. Pachai loudly called out to the boys to gather together. He announced that Mr. Pepperin wanted to talk to them. Then Pachai asked them to listen carefully to everything he would say. Pepperin stepped forward. Seeing him, Coco was extremely surprised. Hatchai smiled and asked if that meant there would be a reward now. Atari calmly replied that of course that was not the case. Pepperin said that first he wanted to thank them for their work today and also added that he had a task for them. Hearing this, Coco was quite surprised and asked him again. Pepperin said that the guys would have to go to Timon's cave. It was very close, on the southern side. He wanted them to exterminate the Slime King there and collect the materials he needed. Dag was confused when he heard about the Slug King and said that monsters would be there. Pepperin smiled and replied that there was no reason to worry as they were all extremely weak. If they worked together, it would be easy. Coco awkwardly said that even if that were the case, she was still not sure if it was safe to send them there alone. Pache led Riz and Pano forward and said that they would accompany the guys on the mission. She explained that the girls had participated in the expedition to Borf's tower, so they would be good mentors for them. Hearing this, Hache looked dissatisfied. Pache said that this time the guys would be led by Pana and Riz. The girls smiled and replied that they were pleased to cooperate with the guys. Suddenly, Hache raised his hand high and asked for permission to ask one question, somewhat embarrassed. Pepperin asked what had happened. Hache smiled and said that maybe it would be too confident on their part, but they had not trained with Pacha in vain, and he did not think the girls were significantly stronger than them, even if they already had some expedition experience. Hearing such audacity, Riz stepped forward and growled at the guy. Watching this, Mr. Pepperin only sighed quietly. Atari closed her eyes and said she partly agreed with what Hache said. She said that she did not particularly want to be rushed by people they did not know very well. At that moment, Pache jumped up and bumped their foreheads together with force. He asked those fools what they thought they were saying, because training and real battles were completely different things that could not be compared under any circumstances. He told the guys that they must obey all orders given to them without any objections. Kacha and Itori pressed their heads and nodded fearfully in agreement, and Riz and Pana were now watching what was happening with surprise. It was still very early outside. Suddenly Nobo approached the boys and noticed where Pepperin was. He had been looking for him for a long time. Suddenly he got scared. He noticed something strange. Seeing the boys coming towards them, he recognized them and said that these were the special students everyone was talking about. Pache awkwardly smiled and asked Pepperin to forgive these foolish boys. The man sighed, smiled, and said that it was even good that they had something to say. It also reminded him of Pache himself when they first met. Pache lowered his gaze and smiled as if to say he had nothing to reply. After that, he smiled broadly and said that Pepperin need not worry, because they will definitely become stronger and will be true knights in body and spirit. Nobo adjusted his glasses and said there would be a problem if the boys grew up like Pache would have to teach humility. Pache got angry and asked if Nobo really wanted to fight him. Pepperin said that Nobo should be told why he came. The man explained, a merchant man came and he wants to inform Nobo about it. Pache exclaimed that their conversation with Nobo is not over yet. At this time, the cave northwest of Gloria Septum was tense to the limit. In the semi-darkness of the cave sat a demon with 3 horns, the guardian of Shin. Suddenly someone told him that they had finally found someone. Shen opened his eyes and asked what his interlocutor wanted. The same 3-horned demon Shin with the title princess stood before him. She said she heard that he lost to a pathetic human ant that made her laugh. Shin looked up and asked the princess where she had learned about this. Rin replied that the former head of security named Petros was once captured by the Artisarid Empire. After she said she would fire him if he told her everything, he poured out a large amount of various information to her. She said that even though he is now free, soon the aviation will start hunting him. Shin turned away and said he did not remember ever serving under the command of someone like that. Rin shrugged her hand in the bag and said she didn't care. She took something out and replied, no wonder he lost after all, he was a very tough opponent. When Rin got a few photos, Shin immediately flinched and jumped up. He asked if she had already met him somewhere. Rin covered her face with the photo and barely smiled. She said that she had not met him yet but is closely watching him because first she needs to gather information about him. She said his name is Pepperin. He is the king of a newly created country that rather resembles a village, and its name is Gloria Septum. Shin gritted his teeth when he heard this name and bared his fangs. Rin told her that the Air Force ordered her to kill him, but the problem is that he has very high-level assistants nearby, and this greatly hinders her in her mission. She asked Sheena if he could handle them. As soon as he heard such a request, the demon was surprised and asked what she was even talking about. She turned around and said that it does not mean that she cannot handle them herself, but he will definitely be able to get rid of all those people who interfere. She smiled defiantly and said she would take care of this kid. Suddenly Shin became terribly angry and pointed a pistol at her. With a bloody voice he said that she should not underestimate him and that they also should not interfere in the matter he had started. She sighed and smiled, as if to say everything is exactly as she thought, but he needs to understand something. In the blink of an eye, she sharply turned to him and crouched down to strike powerfully from below. Shin was surprised but did not manage to dodge. Ren cupped her palm, preparing for an accurate strike, then sharply swung and grabbed him by the throat. With a gloomy aura around herself, Rin said that she had not the slightest desire to listen to such remarks from him, from someone who couldn't even handle one task and kill someone. Rin let him go and reminded him that she herself had said she would take care of him, but she didn't understand why he couldn't do the same. She proposed an interesting game to Shin to find out who would kill Pepperin first. Shin quietly said that it was nonsense. She sighed and added that he shouldn't be so serious, then clarified they were all heading to the Grace Dungeon. She stood up and slowly moved toward the exit. Rin said that it didn't really matter to her whether he went or not, but it was better than just lying in this cave without any meaning. Slowly she left the cave, leaving behind farewell words that echoed throughout the entire room. He silently watched the girl and confusion froze on his face. He was thinking about what to do next. A deadly silence hung in the cave and the boy frowned.